and welcome to the dumbest, shittiest, most fucked up, COVID-infested, swine flu-riddled, bird flu intricated podcast that has ever existed since the dawn of humanity. I'm here with a special guest. I always say that, so it made it seem like the guests aren't special anymore. But as many people have probably noticed, I handpick my guests very, very carefully. I get a lot of people wanting to come on the show, and I'm very careful about who I bring on the show because I'm always careful about bringing someone on the show, and then it winds up becoming a bit of a problem for me later, or a problem for my audience. So, very special guest, Sonny, who is actually an active police officer.
Yes, I am.
And he's also involved in a lot of what we're doing, and I wanted to bring him on the show. So I've seen Sonny, just to give a little background on why I'm bringing Sonny on the show. So I am pretty keen as to all the different people that are on the platform and stuff like that. And when I see someone who is around and they're commenting and they're around, maybe not like constantly all the time, but just even if they're just every once in a while. Like there was a police officer that used to comment on my stuff quite a long time ago. I forget his name, and he's an active LEO. And he would argue just a teeny bit, but not really. It was actually really cool. But then he disappeared. So I don't know what happened with him. But if he would have continued to kind of be around, he was only around for maybe 4 or 5 months, and then he disappeared. If he was still around, I'd probably be bringing him on the show as well. So I just kind of like watch people who are around, who are consuming the information, who are I can tell that their interest and their knowledge of the information is increasing. And then if I see it for quite some time, especially if they're in our private Facebook group, I typically will eventually start thinking about bringing them on the show, depending on their profession and stuff like that. So Sonny is here because he did get a car. Ideally, he's going to get paid for getting that car, and there's a whole background story about that. But where I want to start with Sonny is I want to start with your background as a police officer. Like, where did you start? What was the experience in terms of what do you guys learn in your police academy? How does that work? How long is the training? What kind of courses do you learn? Do you learn anything about the Constitution, personal rights, or is that just kind of like not part of the conversation? These are the kind of things that I'd like to kind of get into and dive into to give the viewer a more of an in-depth. Oh, and by the way, disclaimer, please don't be terribly rude in the comments on this video. I already told Sonny that that's probably what's going to happen, but the thing is that when you guys are really, really mean and rude in the comments on these videos, like a lot of people were when I did that video with the Court of Clerk from Ohio, it makes it that much harder for me to bring people on the show. I'm trying to get retired judges and many other people on the show, and by doing that, it's just going to make my job that much harder because I'm just going to keep doing it. So if it's harder, then it's just going to be harder for me, and if it's easier, it's just going to be easier for me. It doesn't make any difference. So just forewarning that, and if anybody's really, really mean or rude, vitriol and crazy rants and stuff like that, that's just going to be a block. Obviously, if you are upset about something and it's relative to the conversation and you post about that in the comments section, I'm probably not going to delete that or block that. I usually only block the real crazy ones, but just keep in mind, if you do post those kind of comments, you're just making my job harder, okay? With that said, Sonny, go ahead and start us from the beginning, and please walk us through a timeline.
Yeah, just to preface it, based off what you said, we're just trying to bridge the gap. I think we talked about that between, police officers, law enforcement officers in general, with the community that you have. So I started actually as a reserve officer back in 2006. And then I went full-time in 2009 in Florida, so a Florida agency. And I've been a police officer ever since. And then, it's funny, I had a memory the other day about, I remember years ago, maybe like 10, 12 years ago, because you do traffic stops, and I've pulled over a couple of sovereign citizens, and Yeah. So the academy. I think that was the next question.
Yeah,
Or
just like.
did I touch enough on my background? So yeah, I guess a total of
Well, maybe I should direct this a little better. Maybe it'd be easier. So what made you first decide to become a police officer?
actually I was in college and one of my instructors was a police officer up north, and I was just fascinated by it. You know, you're young, you want to save the world.
So there was an actual, like, real, like, valor based, like, well polished, well dressed, manly, like, desire to sort of serve and protect. Essentially, that was the original.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I, I considered. I mean, I still consider it a prestigious job in the sense of if you take away all the statutes, codes, and ordinances and all that stuff. But yeah, back then I considered it, the top of the top. It's a job I would have done for free.
Okay.
Especially my first few years. If you, for some reason they said like, hey, we can't pay you for a year, I probably would have done it for free.
Okay. And so you said this was '09, correct?
Yeah. When I went full time in '09, but yes, I started as a reserve officer for the same department in '06.
In '06. So you were that was while you were in college. You were working as a reserve officer.
No, actually, it wasn't. I was probably 26 at the time when I first started, and then I didn't go full time until I hit 30 years old.
So you were in college and you had already made the decision, but it took you about 6 years or so to like really pull the trigger fully.
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, because I went to college, took some time off, went back to college, and then yeah, that's pretty much it. And then I kind of, you know how it goes when you're young, yeah, girls, drinking,
Yeah.
and then and then it's like, okay, time to buckle down and get a career. So essentially, I moved to Florida with a buddy, and here I am.
But in the back of your head, it was always that you already kind of knew where you were going. You were just kind of waiting for the right time to sort of.
Absolutely, yeah. It's once I knew. There was nothing else I was going to do. Yeah.
And what were you studying in college?
Criminal justice.
Okay, criminal justice. So,
Yep.
so was there ever a thought in your mind of wanting to be a judge or any other aspect to the overall system, or a lawyer, or was police
No.
officer definitely the?
Yeah, that's where it was going. Because I had friends that were police officers, and it was just that's where it was going.
Okay, so it was like your friend base and just kind of everything was already kind of there for you. Did you know? So you knew people already in the local precinct or something that
Yeah.
could have gotten you. So it would have been an easier route for you to get in and all that kind of stuff too.
Yeah, well, not so much an easier route to get in, but because that was up north, and then when I moved down here, it was just, I didn't know anybody, but I eventually did. You know what I mean?
Okay, and I could be wrong on this because you've commented many times, and I try to remember everybody's comments, but it's a bit difficult, I suppose. You're retiring at some point in the near future, is that correct?
The plan, still to this minute, is I am going to retire at the end of this month, this year, May.
The end of this year, May.
Yeah, so May of 2025, June, depending on how much vacation time I have to take before it's actually cemented in the books. Does that make sense?
So you're able to, I mean, that's pretty crazy. You're able to work from '09 until 2015, which is 16, well, depending on when you started in '09, it could be even 15 years. Well, 15, 16 years. Is that like advertised as the runway to retirement? 15, 16 years?
Well, no, our specific pension for my specific department is, you're vested at 10, and then you just keep building from there. So, but
What does
the
vested mean? Vested.
Vested means like you have to have 10 years into the retirement system, and then once you have 10 years in, you can effectively get whatever. So you would get, so if you just did 10 years, you would get whatever it equates to of 10 years. I don't know if it's like 30 something or 40% of your your base salary or whatever, how much you made. I forget how they calculate it, but does that make sense?
Yeah, so if you did 11 years, it'd be more on the retirement. If you did 12 years, it'd be more on the retirement. If you did
Yes.
13 years, it'd be more on the retirement, and it's a graduated scale based off of your base. Okay, so what is
Exactly.
your... Can I ask you what your base was at that time when you started and what it is now? Or can you give me, if you're not comfortable with that question, can you
No,
give me...
I don't care.
Okay,
Yeah, so my base, you're talking about base pay, obviously, right?
yeah,
Yeah, so I think I was making like 40 something
okay.
as a full-time officer, and then now my base salary is at like 119.
Okay. But with inflation and everything, 40 was probably more like 60 back then, and then 119 is probably more like 100 or 95 now ish, right? Is that correct or is that incorrect?
That's probably fair, yeah. I mean, I'm not I don't really know the numbers, but yeah, I guess if you just base it off what you said.
So are there any bonus plans or commission plans in relation to tickets, or is there any sort of like monetary basis attached to any particular posts that are inside of the station?
What do you mean, like, does the department get money off tickets? Is that what you're asking?
No, does the officers themselves get anything from writing tickets or doing particular actions? Is there any...
Oh, no, not that I'm aware of, no.
There's no monetary motivation for any of the activities in the various areas of the police station?
No.
Interesting.
No.
Is that considered illegal or unmoral, or is that just not the way it is?
That's just not the way. I mean, it's like if you want overtime, then there's certain squads that you could go to where they typically work a lot of overtime just because of the assignment they have. But as far as like, monetary value off of like tickets, not that I know of. You know what I mean? They don't. I mean, I know stuff I've heard through different avenues, like of people in our movement, of how departments make money, but it's not something that offers. Well, I'm just speaking for my department, just so we're clear. I don't know about other departments. Just the department I work at, there's no monetary gain for the officer to write tickets.
So the mentality of writing tickets is purely a desire to keep stability and control in the society and to keep people from doing things that could potentially harm others. For example, speeding.
Yes. So I truly believe in the department that I work at that is the goal of, as an example, just traffic enforcement, for an example. That is the goal.
Okay.
Now, beyond that, higher up, wherever money goes, that I don't know. You know what I mean? I don't know.
So when you guys collect money and then it goes into the coffer, shall we say, of the precinct, you don't know what happens after that point.
No, and to be honest with you, I've never looked into it. Like, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure. I believe I've heard it talked about that there's like a certain portion of, like, say, a citation that goes to the department, but like there was never like a number put on it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm just a bit curious, I suppose, as to how that works. If a percentage of it goes up to something else, and then if it does, where? Is there?
Yeah.
There's obviously like the state itself is probably what would be, or like some sort of like statewide police, and then above that is the state itself, kind of a framework or something like that, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I don't think they would ever tell anybody. I mean, maybe staff would know that the answer to that question, but as far as us, like, on the actual in the trenches, nobody knows that.
Okay. And just real quick, as a side note on this show, just for anyone watching this show, sadly, I've never gotten far enough to do a deposition on somebody, but this show, I'm just now realizing, is an excellent example of the kind of questions you should be asking in a deposition. Just as a little side note, I just kind of thought of that as we were going. So, or a deposition on any subject, really, for that matter. So getting back into this, so you okay, so let's go back to the beginning then. So the beginning, you already knew what you wanted to do. It took you a few years. You started with the reserves. What is the reserves? Are you talking about the Army reserves? Or are you talking about a different type of reserves?
No. So usually, I know for Florida, I don't really know about other departments or around the country, but when you have bigger departments, they have a reserve unit. So essentially, there's a lot of retired guys that go into that. So like you retire, but you still want to do police work for whatever reason, you go into reserves. And it's like part time.
Is it volunteer or is it paid?
So you are required to volunteer a certain amount of hours every month, but you can also work like all the details and extra duty jobs and make money. You know what I mean?
So, and where do you currently work? What precinct or what area?
I'm in Central Florida. Like, do you want to know like the department exactly, or just?
I mean, if you wouldn't mind, that'd be great. Sure.
No. So yeah, I work for Tampa. I work for Tampa PD.
Okay, great. So is Tampa PD where you started and you've been there ever since, or did you move around?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've been.
Wow.
Yep,
So you've
I've
been in the
only
same
been
place
here
for 15 years. Okay, good. So I'm tracking.
Yeah.
So 09. So let's talk about 09. So you've already been in the reserve for a few years. How is let's talk about the training of the reserve. Is there any training associated with the reserve, or is it mostly when you went in 09 that a lot of that training took place?
Yeah, so you go to the police academy, and it's so for the reserves it's a little different. If you start out in the reserves, it's they give you all the high liability training, which is shooting, driving, very little bit of law. Why can't I think of the last one? Shooting, and defensive tactics.
Like hand-to-hand combat.
Yeah.
Defensive tactics is hand-to-hand combat, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's learning like police escort holds, and they teach a lot more now, I'm sure, but
tasers is probably a part of that.
yeah, that's high liabilities. That's in the defensive tactics.
Okay. De-escalation, is that part of the training as well?
Yes.
Like emotional and talking and stuff like that?
Yeah, that's really big now, especially over the past trying to think of when that training started heavily rolling out, but probably over the past 5-6 years.
Oh, that's new.
Fairly.
It was being taught in 09, but now it's a much larger section of defensive tactics.
Yeah, well, it's always been kind of told to you throughout, your beginning of your career, and then when you're in the academy, that your best tool is your mouth. You know what I mean? Because essentially, it's like, if you could talk somebody, if you have to make an arrest, and you could talk somebody into the back of your police car instead of, wrangling them up, then obviously that's your best means to do that. But, and I could be wrong on the timing, because I might be a little bit off, but from what I recall, like the past 5-6 years, de-escalation techniques are, I mean, probably you could even go back to, when it was real big. Remember when all those protests were happening with like George Floyd?
Yeah,
and
21.
all that kind of stuff. So, probably at the dawn or just before that, things started, like the whole de-escalation thing got really hammered home in the department.
Okay. And so you said very little law. Is there a reason why there's very little law? Is it just kind of like...
So as a reserve, you're not going to get as much. But then 3 years after, when I went to the essentially I just had to finish up some classes because I was only like reserve certified, and then you have to get like full-time certified. For me to go full-time, I had to basically, you have to do more hours and more, you have to have more law. So just based off my recollection, God, I really don't think you get a lot of law. But when I say law, we're talking about statutes. You know what I mean? Like, hey, these are the Florida statutes. This is the Florida statute book. This is your Bible. So, here you go. here's some testing on it, and that's, you know what I mean. But as far as constitutional law, I mean, so throughout your career in the academy, you're always it was always brought up about, you know, you can't violate people's civil rights. You can't, you know, every people have constitutional rights, which is good, but they don't really. I don't recall them ever really digging into those rights. You know what I mean? Like you know what I mean? Like the first 10 amendments. There's not really a lot of.
So they tell you don't violate people's civil rights, and then they never really go into detail as to what the definition of civil rights really is, basically.
Yeah, I guess the point I'm trying to make is that you don't dig into the Constitution. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's more of, hey, here's the Florida statute book, and then there's not a lot. Like, you raise your hand when you get sworn in, when you first get hired, and, you know, you swear an oath to the Constitution. But at least me, I never read the Constitution.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Do you guys have continuing education? Is there any sort of like CE, like what there is for doctors and stuff like that?
Yeah, so we have these roll call trainings, and stuff gets pushed out a lot in the form of legal bulletins, or if there's like some new case law that comes out. But most of the case law is like, you know, state case law from you know, maybe like another judicial circuit or something.
Does everyone actually read this stuff, or do you guys get together and talk about it, or is it just kind of like a piece of paper that everyone gets that no one reads, kind of a thing?
It's probably a little bit of both, Brandon.
Okay.
There's some people that will read it. There's probably some that are like, doesn't apply to me, you know?
No, I understand. It's no different than anything else. I mean, honestly, people can get mad about that comment, but the truth is that's how it is. You could be working for Tesla, and every week they release a really important documentation, and there's still only going to be 10-15% of people that are even going to read the damn thing. That's just the way it is across the board. It's not a police specific problem. You know, should it have more attention brought to it? Should it be something more where everyone should get together and talk about it, and it should be mandatory that there's some sort of discussion about it at least? That would make more sense, I think. You know.
So yeah, but my thing is that, so I'm trying to think of how to word this. So obviously I kind of like became aware of the whole, you know, difference between actual constitutional law and statutes, codes, and ordinances. So I just think it's important to know that police officers, sheriff deputies, they genuinely think that statutes and codes are law. You know what I mean? I don't think there's not a lot of people. Listen, I don't know anybody that knows the difference between, you know, the Bill of Rights and then what's in the statute book.
I thought they were law for a long time too.
Yeah, and
the first 2 years of my research, I thought they were law, and then I didn't really fully realize they weren't until literally December of last year, 2024.
So, and that's my point. Everybody has been where we have been, and it's just important to know that, you know, the people in our community, the movement or whatever, know a hell of a lot more than obviously the average person and police officer. Now, a police officer will spout off, you know, in my case, Florida statute, like they know statutes inside and out.
But there's a few key ones. You're not talking about like a huge rounded understanding of statutes. You're talking about like they know a few key pieces of case law and they know a few key statutes. Or are you talking about more robust than that?
I'm talking about the statutes that apply to the job, essentially. So there's like statutes for crimes that have no victim.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, you know, my thinking
like possession.
Now, yes.
A lot of possession type stuff. So they would know all the codes associated with any sort of possession codes. Okay.
Because that is considered a crime. and I'm not saying it's good for people to have possession of. I don't want this to get twisted. Like, I don't think it's good for people to have possession of crack, but it's like, but you do have to think at the end of the day, is there a victim? You know what I mean? Now, if they're like distributing it, that's a different story. They're selling it, totally different story. But I'm just talking about the average person that, you know, has, you know, a dime bag of marijuana. It's just an example. You know what I mean? Like, who's the victim? Traffic law. You know, you roll a stop sign. Who's the victim?
Did you know 50% of all court cases are traffic violations?
But so yeah.
And
so
did you know
case in
that?
point.
Did you know that the clerk of court of Ohio that I just had on the show, he said that I think monthly they get like 60,000 cases or 50,000 cases, or maybe it's yearly or something. I forget. Maybe it's yearly, 50 or 60,000 cases, and they just passed a camera speed violation bill that allowed cameras to start writing tickets. And now just the camera ticket cases alone are like 80,000 a year, and it's like completely overloaded their whole system, and it's like destroyed the whole court system. Do you guys have anything like that? Like, what is your experience of that kind of situation, or what is your knowledge of that kind of situation?
So there is traffic cameras in the city. I'm not familiar with it, but I know there's like a couple people in the department that deal with just specifically that. So, but I mean, like, and I don't care. I'll go on record saying, I mean, traffic cameras. Come on, that's the most unconstitutional thing. I just can't imagine. You know, and I don't like Bill Maher, but like probably like 10 years ago, Bill Maher had a funny quote, and he said, you know, he's like, I'll pay this picture of me running this traffic citation with a picture of me writing a check to pay it. I don't know. I thought it was funny.
Oh, I get it.
Anyway,
That's funny, yeah.
But anyways, yeah. So I guess the point I was just trying to hammer home is people just have to realize that police officers genuinely think, and by no fault of their own, that it's just statutes and codes are law, and that's like the end all be all.
Yeah, I want to take a little pit stop here, and I want to say, are you aware of how these camera tickets work and how it operates in law? Are you aware of the rules of evidence at all?
No, I'm not, but I could tell you personally, I've been to court on one of those.
So the reason why there's so much confusion is because a traffic ticket or camera ticket is actually a civil violation. You can type that in. Is a speeding ticket a civil or criminal offense? It's a civil infraction, not a criminal offense, right? And people always talk about that, right? If it's a civil infraction, Rule 301 applies in a civil case unless a federal statute or these rules provide otherwise. The party against whom a presumption is directed has the burden of producing evidence to rebut the presumption. This is literally the entire basis of everything that is happening in traffic with police.
It you know, it baffles my mind. It used to not, but now it just really baffles my mind.
So what it is actually a civil lawsuit that you guys are writing. I'm not trying to be mean or rude. I'm just telling you, because I didn't realize this either until December. Joey Kimbrough actually is the one who cracked this, and I feel like this is like the crack of all cracks. This is as big as when I figured out about naturalization, in my opinion. This is huge, right?
Yeah, you've talked about this in the past, I believe.
Oh, many times. But
yeah.
it's very new. I didn't start talking about this until December of last year. Again, December, we had a lot of huge, massive breakthroughs. When I built those two flowcharts, the negotiable instruments flowchart and the public versus private flowcharts, that's when a lot of this stuff started cracking, right? So what's happening is that every single ticket is a civil case. It's just a civil lawsuit. It's civil versus criminal. It's the simplest thing in the world. What is it? It's a civil lawsuit. The police officer is writing a civil complaint, and then inside that civil complaint is a presumption, and then Rule 301 applies to presumptions. right? This is all of traffic in one sentence. So what happens is that now the party against whom the presumption is directed has the burden of producing evidence to rebut the presumption. Now that starts getting into innocent until proven guilty and kind of all that stuff, which obviously that people can argue that, but they're not. None of this has anything to do with you as a man or a woman. It has to do with the sole proprietorship, right? So what's happening is the police officer in his official capacity is writing a civil complaint against a sole proprietorship. That civil complaint contains a presumption. That presumption is directed at the sole proprietorship as a person, and now the sole proprietorship has the burden of producing evidence to rebut the presumption. Now on the defensive end, for anyone watching this, it's actually really, really, really simple situation because an affidavit is considered evidence. So you don't have to go out and do all this work and do all this crazy stuff and go freaking crazy and do all this stuff. All you have to do is write an affidavit, and you have handled and addressed the burden of producing evidence to rebut the presumption. Now, why does this exist the way it is? It's just purely commercial. 50% of all court cases are generated, so that generates a lot of income for the police station. It generates a lot of income for the court system. It generates a lot of activity, right? But this is essentially, in a nutshell, this is exactly what's going on. It's just a civil complaint against a sole proprietorship. That sole proprietorship, there are tax cases. You can look up sole proprietorship tax cases, and there are cases where they talk about how the sole proprietorship actually can use things like the Fifth Amendment and stuff like that, because the owner of the sole proprietorship and the sole proprietorship itself are considered the same person. My problem with that is they aren't.
Definitely not.
They totally aren't. So my problem with that case law is it's just not true. So, if you want to go in that direction, I suppose you can, but I don't like that because it's just not truth, and I'm not a big fan of things that just aren't true. So basically, what I'm trying to say is, the better choice is to simply defend the sole proprietorship in the case and file the affidavits and file a motion to dismiss in the case. If there's ever any point when an officer or anyone else files a civil complaint with a presumption. A presumption is, for example, let's say there's a traffic ticket or a camera ticket, and you say to yourself, well, what do you mean presumptions, Brandon? Well, what's it going to say on there? Operating a motor vehicle. The word operating has a legal definition. That's a presumption. It's a presumption that you are operating something because that word has a special definition. If you look up the word operating and it says playing with balloons, if you don't rebut the presumption with evidence, then you are legally playing with balloons. It becomes truth or fact in that court case, right? The way that the court system works is you can see it here in 301, but the entire court system is based off of what's called dialectic materialism. This is the entire basis of the entire case, of the entire court system, right? So the way it works is you have a thesis, and then you have an antithesis, and then you have arguing or fighting or clarity between these two. This creates change, which creates the synthesis. The synthesis is considered as truth or fact. This is a Marxist system, by the way. So people are going to say, oh my God, that means that the courts are Marxist. They are. And it's okay. I don't really have a huge, massive problem with this. It's just that if you don't understand this system, you're never going to get anywhere. So the thesis from the police officer is a civil complaint which contains presumptions such as operating, such as motor vehicle, such as roadway or highway. Roadway, it has a definition. Highway is a completely different definition. And then the antithesis, if you never say anything at all, There is no antithesis. That means the thesis becomes the change and it becomes the synthesis. And this is how all litigation works in its most basic element, right? And you say to yourself, "Oh, that's so complicated, and why do I have to do this and this and that?" I'll tell you, I'm one, and there's a million others. You do it once, it becomes pretty easy. The first time's a bit difficult, yes, but well, here we are. If you got a better idea, let me know. I've never heard of any better ideas. So that's the idea I have, and if you have a better one, let me know. I've never heard anything better, so there you go. Until I do, this is where I'm at. If someone, if you have a civil complaint written against you, provide the evidence, which means provide the affidavit. Inside of the affidavit is you're going to become the antithesis to the thesis. Inside that antithesis, you're going to, the affidavit's going to have information such as the word operating means the following, and I was never operating anything. The next item on the affidavit would be this vehicle, this car, this automobile is not a motor vehicle, and there's no evidence to provide that I was transporting any persons or property for any fee, rate, charge, or other consideration. Article number 3 of the affidavit may be, it wasn't actually that the affidavit that the officer wrote or the person wrote said it was a roadway when it actually wasn't a roadway. It was a highway, which is a completely different whatever. That becomes the antithesis, which is inside your affidavit, which combats the Rule 301. Just as a little side note, I don't think you were probably ever aware of any of this during being a police officer. Is that correct, or is that wrong?
No, that is correct. You don't. Definitions to that degree are non-existent.
Okay. So these two people that handle these camera cases, are they the ones writing the affidavits behind what they see in the video? Is that how it works?
I have no idea, but if they're going to court on these cases, then I would assume so.
Because I think every single civil charge or infraction has to have an affidavit. Is that correct, or is that?
No, I gotta be honest, Brandon. I don't know in this specific case with these with the traffic cameras. When I did go to court on those, it was like one of the guys would come into court and that's essentially, they really did do. Have you ever been to traffic court?
No.
They're just kind of like, they really flow through it. If you're not paying attention, you've missed it.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Because there's 9 million of them. Yeah, it makes sense.
Traffic court's insane.
So, but as an officer, as a police officer, you going into court, you would only be there as a witness. You wouldn't be making an appearance because it's the prosecutor, it's the city prosecutor would be the one actually prosecuting the case, not you. So you would just be taken in as a witness. By definition, that's not an appearance. So they just say call up the witness. You go up there, they cross-examine you or direct-examine you, and then you leave, and that's it. Correct?
So so specifically for traffic court, that's what we're talking.
Anything really? Now that I think about it, it'd be that would apply for anything.
Traffic court's a little different because there's not. There's no.
Well, traffic court is civil.
Yes. So there's no state attorney in traffic court. So
there's no state attorney.
No, when you go in there, and forgive me, but since I've been to traffic court, it's been a really long time.
So wait a second. So traffic court, there's no attorney on either side side?
Well, no, like if you're you got a summons to go to traffic court, then you can get an attorney. The person who's defending themselves can get an attorney. But as far as
the police officer,
I'm just going through the motions. Yeah, essentially the judge calls up by name, and then you go up to the case, and if you were the officer involved, you go up with the person who got the infraction, the civil infraction, and then it's essentially the judge is the one who just makes the determination.
There's no prosecutor. So that means that it very well could be, because I've been studying small claims a lot recently. I'm just about ready to file my first small claims case. That sounds like a small claims situation.
I've never given it thought, but now that you're talking about it, but it's really just the officer versus whoever they cited.
Interesting. So it's like a small claims. Okay, interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's good to know. That makes things even easier because part of the rules of small claims, for example, in Los Angeles, is there can't be any attorneys on either side. And
Well,
I would imagine
there can be.
I would imagine if you did hire an attorney, they would be almost like co-counsel. They wouldn't be like in LA. You can't have. There's no attorneys. It says right on the damn website in LA. So I'm sure Florida's different, but it's just an interesting. It's just a very interesting to me to think with this. Yeah, it's very interesting. Small claims is fast. Usually within a month or two, you have your hearing. There's no attorneys. There's no appeals. It's a whole different ballgame. It's a lot cheaper than a normal case. And there's a very, very strict in LA. It's like $12,000 maximum for individuals, which just means sole proprietorships. And then I think $6,250 is the maximum for corporations. So it's a very, very, very strict system. Very, very hot, fast, different type of system. Anyways, I just thought of that while you were talking. So I want to ask you a few questions. I want to go back. What is the racial percentages in your particular area, the Tampa PD? Is it like mostly white, like 80% white, 10% Asian, 10% black kind of a thing, or what's the overall race breakdown?
No, we are. I mean, I don't know exact numbers, but we are fairly diverse between Hispanic, African American, and Caucasian.
Did you notice that occurring more and more over the last 3 years, like all the DEI stuff, or has it always been that way?
For our department, I believe it's always been that way.
Okay. Well, Tampa's a pretty diverse place, so I would understand that.
Yeah.
So, I actually was at a bar one day with a police officer here who had been serving the LAPD for over 30 years. He actually worked down in Compton for many, many years directly with all the big gang lords and stuff, and now he's a semi-retired. I'm not going to get into exactly what he does because there's probably not many people that do it, and it'd probably be really easy to find him. But anyways, he was at a bar, and we had a chat for a long time, and I started talking about this stuff, and he was very clear about tremendous amounts of real, honest-to-God racism in the LAPD and how it's very, very rampant and has been for a long time. And it's actually a really serious issue. What do you find that to be true at all in the Tampa area from your experiences?
As far as like racist cops?
Yeah.
God, no. And I think it's maybe... how old is he? I'm thinking it's generational.
I would say he's 49, 53.
All right, so he's not that old. I was thinking maybe he was way older. It might be generational.
Well, he said he's been in practicing or active LEO for over 30 years, and he's in like a semi-retired, cushier, or whatever. Fuck it, I'm just gonna say it. He's a helicopter guy. So at night, he told me how it works. At night, it's dark and there's helicopters, and they go and they basically find police cars that are pulling people over, and they go over the police car and they shine a light down to make it more safe when there's a single police car with no backup pulling somebody over or doing something. If they see the blue and red lights, they go in the helicopter to that area. If it's just one car, and they put the light on that area to assist. That's basically his job now, which he said is specifically a job only for people who have been around forever, and it's basically like almost like a semi-retirement type position in the LAPD.
Yeah. Just to go back to what you were saying, though, with my particular department, I have not experienced or witnessed. I mean, I've heard of stuff. I mean, obviously, I mean, it's not like it's it's not completely free, but as far as me witnessing it or being like, I've seen some pretty racist shit here, but I haven't, you know. I could.
I think everyone is, to some degree or another, preferable to their own people. I think that's kind of like human nature. But
Yeah.
I guess my question is just, regardless of all of that may be part of our natural nature, are the people that you've experienced in the police stations pretty good at, even if they do have these various ideas and thoughts, they're able to kind of push that aside and give people the benefit of the doubt most of the time, basically, is I guess the better question.
I believe so. And I'm an optimistic person, so I don't know, maybe I could be off on La La Land, but I mean, like I said, as far as my department, yeah, I mean, and they kind of, because if something like that comes out, then like my department is quick. They'll fire you for, you know what I mean. So
oh wow, okay.
Yeah, it's pretty.
Why is that? Is there what behind the mentality of that? What is it that causes, I guess, the police chief to behave that way? Like, is it because he is voted into office and he's afraid of the votes, or is it purely a moral point, or like is it about the PR of the precinct itself, or like what's behind that?
Yeah, so the police chief is appointed; he's not voted in, but yeah, there's no. I believe it's public perception. Like you don't want to. I mean, think about it. Would you want to even be an officer working at a department that was known to be racist, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because we all have heard stories about like LAPD or just wherever. You see there's tons of videos on YouTube. But I think it's more PR related. You don't want to. Yeah. They investigate those things. I mean, that's why we have cameras now, too, so...
Body cam?
Yeah.
Are you guys able to turn those off, or are they forcibly on? Or if you guys do turn them off, is there any sort of disciplinary action on that?
Yeah, so there's very strict policy with that. It's if you're doing any police action or any interaction with the public in a police manner, that the camera's on.
And if it's off, if you shut
it off for any reason, you better have a good reason that you shut it off.
Otherwise,
it's a internal affairs investigation and discipline.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, they're pretty strict on that.
Do you have any knowledge or experience of areas outside of Florida and the inner workings, or are you pretty much insular in terms of Florida and even farther in terms of the Tampa area specifically, having been in the same location for 15 to 16 years? Are you sort of like, are there like conventions or any sort of information source that would give you sort of like an eye or an ear into other areas maybe? Or are you pretty much just, is your knowledge and experience more centralized?
Yeah, specifically state of Florida. Yeah.
And specifically the one area, or is there a lot of information that comes into your world that may come from other areas such as maybe Orlando, Jacksonville, or Miami?
All of the above, but if there's you still get the information drip if something happens with a department in another state. You know what I mean? So like for instance, the riots that in Minnesota or Minneapolis, then if they anticipate like a protest in Tampa, they'll you just get intel from other departments, other sources on hey, this is what you possibly could be facing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So yeah, as far as that,
do officers typically bounce around, or is it typical for a police officer to get a position in a particular precinct and then just kind of stay there and finish out his career? Do you know the statistics on that, or is that?
I don't know, but I do know when I first got hired at Tampa, that it was like Tampa is and I think it still is, especially in Central Florida, but that's like the department to work at. Like people would start out at other departments just to get the experience to come to Tampa.
From the surrounding areas, you mean, or from all of
From
Florida?
surrounding areas, all of Florida.
Why is it such a prestigious place?
I think it's just because of you know, our pay is you know, one of the highest in the state, and then
Wow.
and then our I think it just has to do with our pension too. Our pension is better than, you know, the Florida state pension.
Well, 10 years, that's crazy. I mean, with inflation, you know, 30% of your pay isn't a whole lot. It's but still 10 years to get
Something.
10 years and then at least your rent's paid. I mean, then from there
Yeah.
you can just get a part-time job or just sell a little bit and have with the pension, if you have other supplementary income, does it come down? Is the pension like one of those things where you can't do other jobs, like kind of like how
No, it's
okay,
not like
there's no
Social Security.
there's no rules
no,
to it or anything.
No.
It's just bang, here it is every month.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. I mean, fuck. So, okay, so going back to '09.
Mm-hmm.
So do you go into the police academy for the reserves, or do you not go into the police academy until '09 when you actually started for real, like the full time?
No, you go to a police. So for the reserves, you only have to be certified in the high liabilities.
So you go for limited classes at the academy before you do the
Yes.
reserves, and then when you went in '09, you go back to the academy for more extensive training and certification.
Yes.
Are there optional aspects to the academy, or is it just a very, very, very extremely linear standardized curriculum?
Yeah. There's no options. It's a standardized. This is the police academy. I mean, you know, different academies might, you know, do things a different way. But as far as I know, as far as I know now, and even back then, it's all the same curriculum.
Okay, so how long does it take typically to get through an academy training, and how many hours per day or per week are we talking?
Yeah, so if I remember correctly, the academy is 6 months long,
Oh wow.
and it's like Monday through to Friday, 8 to 5 or 8 to 4, whatever it is, like standard banking hours.
That's like a whole year of college basically.
Yeah, it's extensive. It's not you know, I wouldn't say it's easy, but it's
Are you
it is what
paid
it is.
during that time?
So Florida's a little different. You could like if you're like, hey, I want to be a police officer, you could put yourself through the academy, and I forget how much it costs. It's probably like ridiculous now, but or you could get sponsored. So I could go to Tampa Police and be like, hey, I want to do your sponsorship program, and then essentially, you know, you go through the hiring process, and then they put you in the academy and pay you while you're in the academy.
So the academy is essentially a college that anyone can attend?
Yeah, they run it out of the local like community college over here.
Interesting. I did not know that. Okay, so you start your career in '09. Between 2009 and 2020, what were the various positions that you held, or what were the various duties that you were doing in your tenure?
So obviously you start out in patrol. I did patrol, and then I went to these other positions that were like community-oriented police positions. Field training. I was a field training officer, and school resource.
What is that?
School resource.
Yeah.
You know, it's like so
Watching over
there's like
schools, basically?
Yeah, school security. So, like in our instance, like for the city of Tampa, you know, there'll be a police officer in all the high schools and all the middle schools.
That sounds like a Florida thing.
But you know what? I remember when I went to high school in Massachusetts. I remember we had a resource. He wasn't there all the time.
Huh.
I don't know how they do it, but maybe it's a Florida thing. It probably is. No, but I've heard of other places doing that too.
Interesting.
They don't do that in California?
Well, I went to school in Indiana.
Okay, that's right.
The Bible Belt may be a little bit differently because you stir your coffee with a pistol, so it may be
okay.
it may be a little bit different where I'm from because you got to push aside all the shotguns and rifles just to find your cigarette pack when you're in your truck. You know what I mean? So that's where I'm from. You know, that's how I grew up. You know what I mean? California is not like that at all.
Yeah, I'm going to go on a limb and say California has school resource officers.
It could very well be. Could very well be. So, okay, so that's and then 2020 when everything kind of happened, Florida, I know for a fact because I've been out there and I've talked to a lot of people and I know a lot of people out there. You guys didn't really do much with COVID. It was kind of like a couple of weeks, a little bit was going on, and then that was pretty much about it. You guys were kind of over it in about 10 seconds.
God, it was weird. It was spotty. Some places were gung-ho about it, and some places were just kind of like, eh. So, but yeah,
Florida,
I mean, definitely.
Florida for sure is just, from everything I've ever asked or ever wondered, it just seems like just nobody gave much of a shit about any of it anywhere.
That's probably a fair statement.
Okay.
I'm just thinking in like all of the, the government facilities and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But as far as like the general public, yeah, like.
Were you guys required vaccination? Are we able to get into that conversation at all?
No, yeah, we were not. No, we actually had the option. So
wow, okay.
I have to be. I'm very thankful that
that exploded over here. The LAPD was absolutely fucking pissed.
I would have never done it.
There was a huge. It was in the news. I think they were trying to suppress it, and it was still exploding into the news. That's how bad it was over here. LAPD. I think so. Just to be clear, when I'm talking to this one police officer who's been around forever, and it's just one guy, so obviously,
yeah.
but it's a guy with a very extensive, from what he told me, very extensive history in the LAPD. Their PR department is just absolutely awful. Meaning, like, there could be a lot of really wonderful things happening, and it's just nobody knows about it because the PR department is just so awful in the LAPD that so it may seem like the LAPD is like the worst thing in the world. Personally, every contact I've ever had with any LAPD officer has been just fine. And in fact, I've made some friends and even paid for their lunches and stuff, and I'm waiting in line. And then there's a lot of people who always say, and they're going to say it in the comments, you're white, you're extremely white. And the thing is that that's true, and the officers that I spoke to were mostly white. That's true. So I don't know what to say about that. That could very well be true. I don't know what to say about that. The officer that I did speak to with extensive history, he was down in the Compton area for many, many, many years. He told me that he worked directly with a lot of the gang leaders, and he would basically go to the gang leaders and say, hey, you can't be doing this, you can't be doing that. And the gang leaders were actually very, very willing to work with the police and work with those things. And he told me that, a lot of the gang leaders get a really bad rap, but they're actually not that bad. And actually, in fact, their biggest fear is that the children in the area wind up to be as fucked up as they are. Actually is what this guy told me. He's like, I've worked with a lot of these guys and stuff too, right? And then, I don't know, there's a guy named Muggs who I actually met in person the other night at a cigar shop that I really like. And we hung out for a while. And he was actually the leader or is the leader or was the leader of, I forget what gang, or the Bloods or the Crips, one of the bigger ones, right? And I got to tell you, it shocked me. It really shocked my white, Indiana, redneck heritage, because he was literally, I'm not kidding when I say this, probably one of the nicest guys I've ever met in my entire life. Now, I guarantee you cross him and you're going to disappear probably. But as long as you're friendly and kind and you're not being completely ridiculous, retard, literally probably one of the nicest guys I've ever met in my entire life. Seriously, like wildly, wildly friendly, very, very warm, very, very, very appreciative, excellent communication, acknowledging everything I had to say. I think it took me 3 or 4 times somebody telling me that he was the leader of whatever gang or whatever before I was like, I just couldn't believe it. It just didn't even register in my mind. So I just think, and what I love about these shows is that I just think that there's just so much false awareness and false perception in all these different areas. It's just unbelievable, right? So with that said, so when in your 15 or 16 years on the force did you start to, or did you ever at some point in time kind of realize that things were maybe not quite what they are or should have been?
Well, I remember, and I remember always hearing about stuff like when you're issuing a citation, it's like, oh well, and then you'd hear somewhere in the background, well, that's just a civil, that's just a civil infraction, and then but the thing is I don't think like, because how you just pulled up a definition, and you don't really look at, the definitions. Well, okay, well, what is a civil infraction if it's not criminal? And then you'd hear stuff like, the word common law get thrown around, or you'd have some interaction with maybe some homeless people, and it's like a man and a woman, and and then he'll be like, oh well, that's my wife, and then you're like, well, is that really your wife? And then like you do your thing, you're like, that's not your wife, and then he'll be like, well, common law, and then I remember always hearing it thrown around that, well, this isn't, we don't do common law, but I just never connect the dots or put it together, because like I didn't know the difference between common law and statutory law, because you don't even know that there's another law outside of statutory law, if that makes sense.
Did anyone ever, or did you ever realize that a civil infraction is just literally just a civil lawsuit or civil small claims suit?
The most I could the conclusion that I could ever draw at that time was that it just wasn't criminal. But it never even dawned on me to, like, okay, well, it's not criminal, it's a civil infraction. Well, what is a civil infraction? Well, it's still the law. You know what I mean? So,
but you never realized that it's the same as if I filed a civil case on you. It's the same exact thing.
No.
Okay.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
There's no. It's just,
If you stole money from me, and I wasn't prosecuting you criminally, which I would have to go through the DA's office or something like that to pull that off. If you stole from me or embezzled from me, and I wanted to go the civil route, and I filed a civil lawsuit against you, it's all the same structure, it's all the same motion, it's all the same functionality. When you tear off that second copy of the citation, quote unquote, you're literally serving the individual, essentially, which is also kind of weird, because the party is not allowed to serve. So is the party? But the party would be the state of, or the police station, right?
Yeah, it would be
So that's a bit confusing. So that means that, so you're basically the attorney in fact on behalf of the state.
Yeah,
and then you're basically writing a civil complaint on behalf of the state, which is a person, and you aren't a party in the lawsuit. You aren't the defendant or the plaintiff, so you can legally serve the documents. The only way you can only serve the documents legally, you can only serve the lawsuit legally if you're not a party. So you're basically, you have power of attorney on behalf of the party. The party would be state of Florida. And then you're writing this thing up on behalf of state of Florida as power of attorney, and then you're serving that civil complaint on the spot to the individual in the car, and then you are writing up an affidavit afterward, which is essentially proof of service.
But how does it work? How does it work though? Because so say you do all that, and then you go to the arraignment, and then it's like, but the officer doesn't show up, so it gets dismissed.
Same as a civil case. It is a civil case. If I file a small claims case against you, and we have a hearing date, and you never try to move it, and you never try to enlarge the time, and you never try to do anything, and then I show up and you don't, in a small claims case, that's it. It's basically a default judgment at that point.
So essentially, it is a small claims, because the officer has to be there because he witnessed the infraction and he's making the complaint.
So you're the witness. That's how it would work. That's why it's kind of confusing, because you're there as basically, it doesn't make sense to me, because you're there basically as the attorney, in fact, on behalf of state of Florida, but you're also the witness.
Yeah, that's what's getting me. It's like,
well, check this out. I'm just trying to understand this because this is important, right? So if we go to, let me share the screen. I'll show you something that we've been using recently more and more, and we're going to continue to use, and nobody knows about it. Rules of professional conduct. Let's do Florida. It's all the same. Let's see. Take this off. We're going to go to rules set 3. And then we're going to go down to 3.7, and I want to see if it's the same here as it is everywhere.
Oh, they're literally all the same, huh?
This particular code, which is the rules of professional conduct, from my experience, is literally word for word across all jurisdictions, all states. Same with the rules of evidence. It's not like the rules of actually, no, I'm wrong on that. Actually, it's pretty much the same, but it does change. But the wording changes a little bit, but I've never seen any of the wording really change much of the meaning anywhere that I've ever looked at, right? Let me see here. No, this is... let me see here, witness. I'm sure it's in here, but I think it might be a little bit harder. I'm going to look at the federal one. We're going to go back. I'll show you the federal one. Professional conduct. 0.7. So we'll just go to the California one, but I'm sure it's the same in Florida. It just looked like a lot more to dig through to try to find it, right? So a lawyer shall not act as an advocate in a trial in which the lawyer is likely to be a witness, unless the lawyer's testimony relates to an uncontested issue or matter. The lawyer's testimony relates to the nature and value of legal services rendered in the case. The lawyer has obtained information, written consent from the client. If the lawyer represents the people or a government entity, the consent shall be obtained from the head office or a designee of the head of the office by which the lawyer is employed. So I guess I'm just trying to wrap my head around this one. If the lawyer represents the people or a government entity, which would be you guys, the consent shall be obtained from the head of the office or a designee of the head of the office. So I guess I'm wrong. I guess you guys operating as the attorney and the witness at the same time might not actually violate Rule 3.7, which is really interesting. Because you guys really, and then this one's also interesting too. The lawyer's testimony relates to an uncontested issue or matter. Most traffic violations fall into this category.
Yeah. And then...
You know, it's funny. This makes sense too, because from my experience, if you say anything to contest a traffic ticket, they just go away. Like, you could literally take, like, a fucking Xerox copy of your dick and send it into a, I mean, not literally, not literally, you probably get held in contempt for that, but you know what I mean? Like, you could draw like a smiley face with crayons and submit it into a case, and from my experience, traffic tickets go away. I mean, literally like that easily. Like to the point where I'm like, what the fuck? Literally, I'm like, they don't even try. This might be why, maybe.
I'm trying to think. I just remember traffic court, like, hey, what are you playing? They go, they do the arraignments first, and then it's like, at the end, if you even stay there, then they'll do a trial on, a traffic ticket.
They actually do a trial. Wow. Okay, I never heard of that either. Okay. So, I don't know if you answered the question. I apologize. Let's go back to the question. When did you kind of realize things might not be what you thought they were, or what?
Actually, not that long ago. I think maybe the end of 2021.
Is it because of everything that was going on in the society, or was there what was it that caused you to kind of?
Just if you want to dig into it. So, originally I was watching a podcast that it was crypto related, because that's kind of about the time I was started diving into cryptos heavily with the research. And then, so David Straight was a guest on some random, podcast involving, a guy who normally talks about cryptos. And then, I don't know, just what he was saying caught me. And then, okay. I went down the whole David Straight thing, and then I branched off, listening to several different people, and then and then you just start buying Black's Law dictionaries, and all like a bunch of books. I've been through a bunch of books, and then that's when it dawned on me. You're kind of like, wait a minute, not everything is as it seems.
Okay, and were you scared to tell anyone in your profession about that, due to the fact of the sovereign citizen label that's typically associated with that kind of thing?
No, I'm never scared. It's more of I got to be honest, just nobody knows what the hell you're talking about. You know what I mean? Nobody knows, the definitions that we know, and just nobody knows. Nobody knows the difference between a automobile and a motor vehicle. Nobody, you know what I mean? If go ask any cop on the street, what's the difference between an automobile and a motor vehicle, and what's the definition of a driver? I promise you will not be able to find one unless you run across me here in Tampa. Other than that, I don't know of anybody that I work with. It's not something that comes up in conversation a lot. And there was I remember one time and I don't remember exactly what happened, but I remember, talking about some definitions, and it was just kind of like a laughing party after that. You know what I mean? And I think
they just didn't give a shit. It just didn't even.
It was just kind of like. You know what I mean? I think the sovereign citizen term did get tossed around, and then it was just kind of laughed off. But yeah, nobody. It's just nobody know. When I say nobody knows, Brandon, there's not a lot of people that know in the law enforcement community.
I would, and again, I'll go a step farther for people who are going to freak out in the comments and everything. I don't think this is a law enforcement specific. I hear it all day long, every day, from everyone of every walk of life. It's the same thing. It's not law enforcement specific. So people can freak out in the comments, and all I'm going to see by people freaking out in the comments is I'm going to see someone who does not have much of a social or professional life, because I guarantee you go into any group or any professional or social group or category, and most likely that is how this information is going to be received, from my experience.
I would agree, because I've heard the term, anytime you bring any of this kind of stuff up, it's an automatic, and by design, obviously we know by design, but yeah, it's an automatic, is that sovereign citizen stuff?
Do you guys have any? Well, just real quick, it's pretty dark on your end. It's okay.
Oh yeah, let me.
It's okay on my. If you want to fix it, we can fix it real quick. If you don't care, we'll just keep going.
No. Do you want me to fix it? Do you want me to shine a little?
Go ahead.
Yeah, give me a second. Let me just put a light on.
Sure.
Nope, that's still dark. Hold on.
That's not terrible. That's
I don't need it too bright.
No, that's
is that light enough?
That's perfect, actually. That's just fine. So,
Okay.
so did you guys ever get? Because I know back in like '09, 2012, a lot of the articles that people have sent me about the whole sovereign citizen thing, especially when it's directed toward police, a lot of things were coming out around that time, '09 to 12. That kind. I don't know if there was some kind of like a big uprising or something. I wasn't a part of any of this at that time. I wasn't a part of any of this until actually pretty recently. So, did you guys experience that, or was there something going on at that time, or have you guys gotten special trainings on this subject over the years? Or
it's a little faint. I'm trying to remember, but I do remember it was around that time period, the whole 2012, 2013, where it was starting to come out, the whole sovereign citizen thing, and like, hey, this is the policy on if you encounter one of these types of people, this is how we're going to handle it.
And it's the whole call for backup thing, and then hang out, and then wait, and then.
God, I don't remember specifically because it's been a while, but yeah, probably there was something like that. Like, hey, just if it warrants a citation, give them the citation, send them on their way. Backup, I do believe backup was because wasn't there like a bunch of videos and some issues in other states where there was just like a couple cops got mowed down by when I say mowed down, they encounter sovereign citizens just would like shoot them dead on the side of the road. Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't really consider them anything close to what I do or what we stand for, but yeah, they've gotten.
No, I think that's common knowledge now that there's a clear distinguishment between whatever that was. Like you say in the beginning of the courses, it's kind of like there's not really tolerance for the people that just spout stuff off and want to be combative, and
yeah.
It's just not. You got to handle yourself
Yeah. So after you found this video with David Straight, and you're kind of going through this whole revolution or evolution, that's probably when you started looking at other people who are also teaching or talking about this information. That's probably how you came across my platform.
Now that I think about it, I'm trying to think of how I came across your platform, but I don't.
So just real quick. My first version of my first website, which was a pretty ratty, pretty discombobulated, junky, text-only website, but it did have some of the branding, and it was not the worst thing on the internet. That's for damn sure, especially in this space. The bar is pretty low. Not to be too mean, but it just is. Period. Was in March 14th of 2022. We're actually 2 days away from our 3-year anniversary. My 1.0 version of my free Contract Killer course was released on July 2nd of 2022. So you probably, and then I started going on shows like a mad person, like 5 or 6 shows a week between that time and the end of the year in 22, and then all through 23. I was doing shows, probably 2 to 5 a week. So I would assume you probably found me either late 22 or sometime in 23, I would assume.
No, actually, I didn't stumble across you until last year, I believe.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was like a random video, but it caught me how you were diving into definitions and the whole negotiable instrument thing, UCC, and then after that I was like, psh.
Okay. So
that was last year, definitely.
Okay. So so you saw some random video, got interested, and then you signed up for the course?
Yeah.
Was it the 1.0 course or the 2.0 course at that point in time?
1.0.
So it would have been before August. Because I released 2.0 in late August. So it would have been earlier than that in the year.
Yeah, I can't even believe I don't know exactly, but I should have had a little pad here of
No, it's all it's
reference
okay.
points.
So you watch the entire 1.0 course?
Yeah.
Kind of surprising because that was a pretty disjointed course, especially compared to 2.0. Have you seen 2.0 as well?
Oh yes.
Okay.
Yep.
2.0 is a lot better.
Yeah. It is. It's more polished. Let's say that.
I mean, yeah, I guess if you consider the first one a polished turd, yeah, sure. So I mean, it is what it is. I joke and kind of beat myself up, but it's all in good fun because I know, I
Nah.
came from somewhere and I got to somewhere, so that's just kind of how it is, right? So
A lot of information, even in 1.0. That, to me, that was revolutionary.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
I guess it was technically. So okay, so what is it that you were while you were going through all this that kind of caught your eye the most? You mentioned negotiable instruments. Is that kind of like the most interesting part of all of this, or what?
No, it started out with I was trying to nail down the passport because I'd known about the passport years ago, but I could never. There was nobody out there that at least I knew of that could really nail it down. Like, hey, this is how you get the correct passport that you're trying to get. And I couldn't, everybody was talking about ways to do it, like David Straight and multiple others. And I just knew, like, I don't know. There's not a lot of people having success. So I waited, held off. And then between, your course and some other information like the Bad Wolf, and then I'm like, okay.
Copper Moonshine Stills, Colonel Wilson.
Yes, that too. That in the very beginning.
Yeah.
And then and there's also another dude, I can't think of his name. I think he's involved with like the 0%.
Oh yeah, I have that book. Something Bay.
Yeah, I think it's Duval Day, but I think that's just a pen name for the guy who runs that whole thing. Involved with the. But very very good information there too. So yeah, I was never like, I just wasn't satisfied with one source. I even still to this day, I multiple platforms I gather information from, and then I kind of like put it together and say, okay, this is what I'm going to do.
Okay. Do you so what all actions have you done so far based off of my material? You've done the passport, you've gotten a car, have you done private trusts? Have you done anything with that?
Yeah, but I had done that prior.
Okay.
And I also did the revocation of election.
That's fascinating being a police officer. I believe per policy you have to be a US citizen to be a police officer. Is that correct?
Well, per policy to get hired, you have to be a U.S. citizen. I could not find anywhere that you had to maintain
U.S. citizenship.
So yeah, and from what I understand, you can't force somebody. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Are you exempt then at work, or how did you give? I can't even imagine giving a police station a W8BEN. I mean, you might as well just throw a hand grenade in there and set it on fire. But maybe I'm wrong.
No. There's actually another way, and then I think we can get into that. Maybe I can fill you in on that after. I don't know that, like,
no problem.
Maybe that would be something to talk about here.
No problem.
But I'll fill you in on the backside.
But you're doing this, and it's been successful, and you haven't had any issues.
Yes.
Okay. Good.
Yes.
That's what matters.
Minus the car, and I've been getting a lot of blowback on the car too from people on Twitter, and I just chalk it up to, like, listen, like, you wouldn't be making those comments if you truly knew how banking worked.
Well, I find it funny how the most blowback anyone has ever gotten on the car thing is from social media, not from any sort of police or law enforcement. The worst thing I've ever heard is somebody being in handcuffs, escorted off the property, and then unhandcuffed and let go. And then they go online and tell everyone they got arrested, and then that gets into all the haters, and then the haters say that they were arrested. So, but the reason why someone would get handcuffed, escorted off the property, and then unhandcuffed is because they're being crazy and they're being belligerent in a way that is not good. It's probably not if somebody had a body cam footage of what went on that caused a person to be handcuffed and then escorted off the property and then let go, and I were to get my hands on that video footage, I guarantee you it's not anything even within 100 football fields of anything that I teach or anybody else teaches.
Yeah.
It's probably
I would agree.
screaming and God knows what, threats and God knows what else. I have rights and God knows what else. It's probably just really awful. And then they want to play the victim card, so they go online and say, I was arrested, when really they were just put in handcuffs, taken off the property, and then let go. But that's the worst I've ever heard. In fact, David, who's in our private group as well, he actually has the DA's office has locked in on his whole situation. It's very similar to yours, right?
Yes, I am in contact with him, and he has some. Yes, me and him have been, well, mostly him, but he's been, because he's ahead of me.
Yeah, that guy's a little fireball. He's just
So
totally. He
yeah,
is not the
he's-
kind of guy I'd want to fuck with.
Yeah, he is.
Which I love, by the way.
Yeah, he's sending me stuff, and I'm like, holy shit, this guy.
Yeah, we have
he's on
another
it.
guy in our private group. Our private group, by the way, whenever I talk about it, we get hundreds and hundreds of people trying to enter the group. I decline almost all of them, and the reason why is because there's actually questions that you have to answer when you enter the group. Most people don't answer them.
Yeah.
Now, the first question is, what actions have you taken? If you haven't taken massive action, you will not be invited into the group. If there's ever any point when you're in the group where you show or prove that you have not taken massive action, such as posting a stupid comment or post, you're banned forever, and you can never, ever come back. Even if you do decide you want to go out and actually study, you can never get back into the group. So the second question is, have you completed the entire 2.0 course? And then the third question, which will not even be mentioned here because it's just a special question that asks a special question, and if you don't know the answer, you can't get in. And that's the end of the story, right? And if you get in and you say stupid shit or do stupid shit, you're banned forever, not kicked out, banned forever. So don't go on or trying to find the special group. Don't comment about the special group or anything like that unless you've finished the entire 2.0 course. You've taken massive action, which includes filing lawsuits, defending yourself in a lawsuit, filing motions, especially if there's a docket that we can all look at. Doing a passport is not massive action. Setting up private trusts, borderline massive action. But when you start getting into, like, I've done my passport, I've done multiple trusts, I've done, a registered trademark on my name, I've done this, I've done that, I've done a UCC1, I've done these various things. Okay, maybe I would consider that to be massive action, but massive action is not, I want to learn more. It's not, oh, I want to do a passport. It's not, oh, I just submitted a passport. None of that would be classified as massive action, just to be clear. So don't waste my time and don't waste your time. Now, with that said, David is very, very, very methodical, very, very organized.
Guy's a beast.
And he's also very, very stable, and he's very clear, and he's very aggressive, but in a very calm, grounded way. And he is just absolutely kicking ass and taking names. And he actually has a full-blown case, and he got one truck and one sports car. And
I think he's on 3 now.
Okay, so he's got 3 now. Okay, good. So what this is, for people who are not familiar, is that, when we learn about negotiable instruments, and you learn about what is a negotiable instrument, an unconditional promise or order to pay, how does that work, blah, blah, blah. When you get a house or when you get a car, the original note itself, the original promise to pay, is actually currency. And depending on how you sign it and how you release it and then what you do after that point, you're actually supposed to be getting paid to take a free car or a free house. There's actually the entire value of the car or house is already built in, and then there's also the interest, which is actually additional value. It's all built into the value of that original note. So the whole point of what I teach and the whole point of what we're doing is that you get a free car or a free house, yes, but then after that you take the additional steps needed to actually get paid on the additional value of the note. So actually you're supposed to be getting paid to take a free car or a free house. That's how it's supposed to be. And this is all 100% legal. And this is actually how it's supposed to happen. This is actually literally what I'm talking about, is how these types of transactions are supposed to work. And then through fraud and misrepresentation, you think that you're getting loaned this stuff when you're really not. You think the interest is to the bank when it's actually not. It's to you. The bank is just acting as an intermediary. They're actually just a currency exchange, swapping your currency, which is the promissory note, for what's called Federal Reserve notes, which is a different type of currency, and then giving you that back to you. And all they're doing is acting as a middleman to do a currency swap. And when you realize how all this works, you go out and you do these things, and then if you're not getting paid to take a house or a car for free, then you need to take litigation steps, and that can often be criminal. These are actually criminal. You can go criminal or civil, right? Criminal, you have to do it through a DA or some sort of government officer, because you can't file any sort of criminal complaints or criminal causes of action on your own. That has to be done through either a DA or some kind of other person. And then civil, you can do on your own. You can do it what's called pro se or sui juris or whatever you want. Or you could even do both at the same time. You can do criminal, or you can do criminal, see if you can get that to take traction, and if it doesn't, or if it does, you can run that to its completion, and then if there's anything left over that you don't like, or if it wasn't picked up, or if you're unhappy, then you can move to criminal. That's oftentimes how people will do it. So then you'll have the criminal, you'll complete that, and then once that's done, if you still want to, you would start civil, and then you would complete that, and then that would complete the entire. So with these particular people, such as David and yourself, you guys decided you wanted to go down the criminal route, which is honestly probably the best route to start with. And then if it doesn't go anywhere, you can't get traction, or there's nothing happening with that, then I would probably go civil. If that's probably how I would do it myself. What has your experience? Well, first off, what occurred? Because I remember what occurred, but I'm going to have you talk about it. What occurred, of which was the criminal act, the crime? What was the crime that was committed?
So what was committed was forgery, because I obviously I put an endorsement on my note, and then so when the bank sent me an invoice, I sent them written correspondence like, hey, per my endorsed note, I'm not sure why you're sending me an invoice, but et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like,
what was the way you endorsed it? I forget. You sent it to me. It's on the post, because I post your stuff.
It's just pay to the without recourse, pay to the order of, all caps name.
Okay.
By agent.
And then, so you did basically the state version of a FOIA request, or you did basically a FOIA request essentially? Is that what you did? Or you just did a letter basically?
No. I just wrote out. Actually, I just wrote out an affidavit to them and got it notarized saying, here's my. I sent them a copy of the copy I have.
You were given copies when you left the car dealership. Okay.
Yes, the provided copies from the dealership with the endorsement on it, and basically sent them that with an affidavit that I wrote up and had it notarized, sent it to them, and then they were basically like, yeah, that's great and all, but here's what we have. So they sent written correspondence a couple weeks later and sent me the same promissory note.
Have.
Yeah, and then it just had a blank endorsement on it. So
the way that it was signed, was it in your handwriting, or
No. It was when you use DocuSign or some kind of, so it was just the generic DocuSign signature that you would just automatically pick because you're lazy to slap on a document and sign it electronically.
So the forgery was the fact that it was originally signed in a certain way of which you have evidence, thank God.
Yes.
And then somehow between that point and the quote unquote lender, it's not really a lender, it's a currency exchange.
Yeah.
Somehow that got changed to a blank endorsement on some sort of an e-sign, DocuSign type document.
Yes.
Okay.
In other words, it was changed.
Did you physically sign the original piece, the original note?
I physically signed it on on the tablet.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
It came out. It was small, but it came out on the.
I remember seeing it.
Note.
Yeah, it was all there.
Yeah.
I remember seeing it.
Yeah.
So I remember. Okay. So you contacted your local DA in Tampa, I'm assuming?
No. So what I did initially, I tried to. Not I tried. So obviously, I spoke to the bank and I spoke to the dealership, which was funny because I spoke to the general manager and I explained to him what happened. He's like, "Oh, well," he was trying to make up some excuse. It was a while ago.
Did he know you were a police officer? Because that's just absolutely fucking hilarious to me.
At
my
that
God.
specific time on the phone, I didn't say I was, but it was just funny because he was like, "Well, I'm not." He's like, "Well, what are you trying to do?" He's like, what is the end goal?" And I was like, "Well, the end goal is the car." And he's like, "Well, I'm not," because I think he was trying to get me to admit, like, "Oh, you're just trying to get a free car." And it's like,
I've had people tell me, maybe it was you. I've had people from my group calling the quote unquote lender and the lender people telling them that. And I'm like,
"Oh, that wasn't me."
okay, that's crazy. You guys really don't have a clue what's going on, brother, because you guys are the ones getting the free note.
No, they don't.
They're the ones getting the free note. They're the ones who are really making away as a bandit. All they're doing is moving some shit around, and they're walking away with the entire note. It's crazy.
And they work with negotiable instruments every day, and they have no clue how they actually work. So basically that's what I was trying to tell him. He's like, "Well, I'm not interested in selling cars with using banking bylaws or whatever you're doing." And I was like, "Sir, it's not banking bylaws. It's actually, Florida Statute 673 that governs our UCC in the state of Florida that governs negotiable instruments." And he was like, "Well, I don't know anything about that." So I was like, "Well," I said, "that's kind of what you're dealing with every day. So it might behoove you to at least know your state UCC."
And this is all over the phone, huh?
This is on the phone. So basically, yeah, he's like, "Hey, I'll get back to you." Obviously never got back to me. And then multiple conversations with the bank and their executive office, and they sent me written correspondence basically just reiterating twice that, like, as far as we're concerned, this obligation is still yours. And so I'm like, "Okay, sounds good." And then I started going the whole criminal route. So I went and made a report with the local sheriff's office. And
were you collecting all this evidence and getting everything in writing? Were you recording the phone conversations, or are you guys? How is Florida on that? Is Florida a two-party consent on recording, or one party?
I believe so, but I did write down dates, times, who I spoke to.
So you have a timeline. So
yes,
like it's basically you wrote all the information down in a timeline for an affidavit later.
Yes,
Okay.
all the information's there. Yeah.
So your plan was to provide the written evidence and then also an affidavit with all of the information of phone calls, when they took place, how long they took place, and who you spoke to and what they said.
Yeah. Basically just building the case to show, like, hey, I'm trying to resolve this without going criminal. But now I'm in the criminal phase. And
how did that start? Did you go down to the DA? Do you already know the DA? Did you file a written complaint online? Or how did that work?
No, actually, I take that back. So I just I filed several complaints with. God, I filed a complaint with it, like
credit agencies,
the
and
FCC,
SEC,
the Consumer Protection,
Yeah.
blah blah blah, the Attorney General. God, there's probably a couple more in there, Brandon, I've filed complaints with, and the DMV. But now I am. I actually just spoke to the Attorney General of Florida today, and she, one of the people in the office, and she kind of directed me to another avenue. But yeah, I'm thinking. I'm not 100% sure. I'm going to try one last thing with the state attorney. And then I'm just gonna have to go civil at this point. So I'm essentially, I believe I'm right on the cusp of turning it civil and having to do my own case.
So you can't get any traction criminally with this. Basically, is what you're saying.
Yeah, it's like I said, I have one other avenue that may or may not pan out, which is insane because it's like you would think. I mean, it's fraud. Forgery.
I believe Title 18 fraud. I think I have this on my resources page. OneStupidFuck.com, State National Resources.
I think I know what you're going to say too.
if I scroll down, I have a whole section that has all of the. I'll go ahead and do a screen share on this. I have a whole section. Let me do this here. I just like doing this little side exploration stuff for people who might not be super familiar with everything I do, because I do have massive amounts of content literally everywhere, and it can be a little bit confusing. I understand that. So this section on onestupidfuck.com, on the state national resources section, this is just I haven't done much of this in a long time, but this is basically just a little breakdown of a lot of really cool stuff. The problem with a lot of this is that when I made this, I didn't realize at the time that you'll see with a lot of my lawsuits, which are all accessible through williamsandwilliamslawfirm.com at the current and previous litigation page, a lot of the Title 18 stuff, unless it says or unless there's something in there that gives you what's called a private right of action, a lot of the Title 18 stuff, you can't bring it in a civil case. You have to go through the DA. You have to do it. It's all criminal. These are all, a lot of them are criminal, right? There are certain ones that have civil counterparts. For example, 18 U.S.C. 242, that's the breach of rights under color of law. This is for 18 U.S.C. 242. This is the criminal version that you would need to go through the DA's office. Whoever under color of law of any statute, ordinance, blah, 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 subjects anyone to any deprivation of rights, privileges, or immunities, security protected by the Constitution, blah, blah, blah. So let's say you wanted to do a civil case with this. It'll get this cause of action, like each time you list one of these things, it would be called what's called a cause of action, which is basically, it's called duty, breach, damages. They have a duty to follow this code. They breached this code by pulling me out of the car illegally, and then the damages of that were I had to pay to get my car out of the tow yard. I got hurt. I was in the, blah blah blah. They did damages. That's what composes or comprises what's called a cause of action in a court case, right? So, if you wanted to bring this code into a civil court, they throw it out because they call it no private right of action, which happened to me a lot at the beginning when I first started filing cases, because I didn't understand any of this. So what you do is you find, in this case, they have one specifically that's the same exact thing on the civil side, which is 42 U.S.C. 1983. It's a lot of the same wording. Subjected to any citizen of the United States, blah, 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 in deprivation of any rights. So if you use this, it's no private right of action. If you use this, you'll be fine. And then it's the same thing with 18 U.S.C. 241. You have the conspiracy version of 242, which is two or more people working together in unison to conspire to injure the free enjoyment of any right or privilege secured by the Constitution. You can't use this one unless you want to go criminal. This is the one the DA would use. You would use 42 U.S.C. 1985, conspiracy to interfere with. This is the civil version, right? This is just things that I learned just doing all this and fucking it all up. But basically, this is basically what he's talking about in this show, and I just wanted to kind of show that real quick.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
So, getting back go ahead.
Oh, sorry. No, I was going to say, I even went as so far as I filed a complaint with the Federal Reserve because there were several U.S. codes in their civil section that were, with basically recording of, I'm paraphrasing, but recording on like bank ledgers, like false bank ledger entries, but they just sent me an email later on saying it's not really our wheelhouse.
Whose is it?
So, I'd have to go back in the emails.
Well, it wouldn't be. They're protected by the banks. The banks are the ones that are actually swapping these things. So it's sort of like a money laundering operation, because by the time it gets to the window, they don't know where it came from or what it is or anything. Like, they've completely shielded themselves from any real criminal liability.
Yeah.
So, I mean, from again, a lot of this financial stuff, I always say the same thing. in the letter of the law, it's not really illegal. Besides the fraud part, you start calling that kind of stuff out. But like, especially with the Federal Reserve, a lot of this stuff isn't illegal. But if you start getting this stuff in front of a jury, they're going to find it illegal, even though it's not statutorily illegal. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Because a jury can nullify the statutes and the laws. If they find someone guilty, it doesn't matter what the laws say. That's it. If a jury finds you guilty, you're guilty. Now the problem with criminal cases, by the way, for people watching this, the reason why it's so hard to get a prosecution in a criminal case is because the entire jury has to find you guilty. If there's 8 or 10, I forget how many jurors, or 8 or 10, I forget, 12. If one of the jurors finds the defendant not guilty, it's over. So keep that in mind if you're going to be putting together a criminal case. There's a reason why you don't see the IRS prosecuting very many people. There's a reason why you don't see the government prosecuting a lot of people. There's a reason why you don't see a lot of these prosecutions go very far. Even people who get the diplomatic license plates torn off their car and they get told that they have fraudulent plates, and all those cases all get dropped. And there's not very many of them, by the way. But the ones that do exist, I do follow them. And they're all getting dropped. The DA drops them almost immediately. And the reason why is because it's just not going to happen. It's just never in a million years going to happen. Now, at the same time, if you're going to prosecute these things, you have to realize you have to really have your case down really, really well. Otherwise, it's not going to go anywhere, right? But we have this one here, laundering instruments while involved in unlawful activity. Laundering of monetary instruments. I'm not sure if this one would apply, but I remember...
I've been through so many of these things, trying to see what applies and what doesn't apply.
But anyways, forging a signature is one thing, but it's also forging the negotiation of the instrument.
Yeah, which there's
literally specific criminal aspects to that. Let's see here.
Yeah, even in the state statutes there is.
Yeah, I haven't gone into this in a long time, but I just remember there being
like uttering a
transporting
forged
securities that were acquired under false or fraudulent pretenses. This would be a good one. Let's see what this one says here. Yeah, look at this. 10 years. Up to 10 years.
Shall be fined.
So getting into these things, the problem with these things is that the crimes are so rampant and they're occurring not millions of times, but for sure thousands or tens of, well, if you count every single credit card transaction as its own individual security, I guess millions of times a day. Millions of times a day, these crimes are being done essentially, and nobody knows anything about any of this. And when you bring it up, they just can't even believe that it could be possible. And the fines for it are so extreme that if you did get any traction prosecuting any of this in a criminal case, I mean, these people are going to be sweating bad real quick. This is not $5,000 slap on the wrist. This is like massive criminal activity here with very, very, very serious prison time.
The issue is I mean, nobody like local law enforcement does not know, and I was even told like it is such a beast to even try to investigate stuff like that it's like out of their scope of ability. You know what I mean?
You were told that by the district attorney or the state attorney?
No, not by the district. No, not by the state attorney. That's just like local law enforcement, which I get. And I know just from and credit to Dave, but he's given me a bunch of because there's been in other states where they've investigated, forgeries, different scenarios like this. Like mine's a little different, but
well, yours is, you don't even need discovery. yours is literally just, here's the one I signed, here's the one they got.
yeah, and it's I think it just kind of boggles my mind that it's I'm trying to think of, like, maybe I'm too focused on the criminal aspect of it, and I just need to, like, just leave that alone.
No, I disagree. I think Joey Kimbrough would say the same thing, because I think why, and I think almost like in this respect, like what would Joey Kimbrough say about this? He would say no. He would say you're actually building your civil case right now while you're going down the criminal rabbit hole. You are actually building a criminal case. You are actually, like, you are literally building your criminal, like, every single thing you're doing on the criminal side is just building a civil case. I mean, you're literally, I think this is exactly what you should be doing, and I think you should exhaust that avenue fully, because you aren't wasting your time at all. You're building a civil case.
Yeah. Well, that's I guess that's reaffirming to hear. It's just a little frustrating. You're going down, it's speaking, a lot of talking, a lot of hours,
True, but at the same time, if you succeed, well, first off, what are you learning during this, especially being a police officer? But even more than that, you're learning so much about the criminal prosecution system. You're learning about the DAs. You're talking to attorneys. You're learning more about the legal system. You're learning more about banking. You're learning more about money. Even if you just did that alone, the more you learn about something, the better you can handle it and manage it in your life. It's like a normal thing to understand, right? So money is going to be less overwhelming to you, less upsetting to you. If you don't have enough of it, it can be more of a relaxing situation. It's not this desperate, wild, horrible, fearful, terrifying situation that a lot of people find themselves in. It's a bit, this whole subject of money and negotiable instruments, a lot of the emotion comes out of it, and it becomes way more manageable just in general in life by understanding and pursuing these various avenues. That alone has monetary value, right?
Yeah.
And then on top of that, you're learning how to build a civil case, and then you're going to file the civil case. You're going to prosecute the civil case. You're learning so much along the way. Just that alone has so much value. And then if you were to succeed in a civil case, which I have not, but I will one day, the gains to be had from this sort of civil litigation is just unbelievably massive. It's basically infinite money.
Yeah.
So people go to school, or they go to the police academy, or they do this for 2 years or 4 years or 8 years, or they get a PhD to be a doctor or a lawyer so they can make their $100,000 a year coming out of college. This can be a 1 or 2 year part-time while you're doing other things, and you come out the other end essentially an attorney in fact, and if you win, you come out the other end basically with infinite money or retired. So I look at it as I don't know of many things in this world that have this kind of return on investment. I personally don't think, from everything that I've experienced in my life, and I've experienced a lot of really cool things, I don't think there is anything in this world that has a better ROI than what we're doing, personally.
Yeah. Yeah, even monetarily, just the education. Because, I mean, the thing I'm finding, like you said way long ago, like we're kind of on an island. Nobody knows about this stuff.
Yeah, I
know. Nobody.
That's kind of why I push so hard. I feel like I'm basically kind of creating a whole new nation, and I have my own nation for a reason, because it really truly is. People, people love me or hate me. There's not really any in between, and my haters is a very, very small group. If I charge for my courses, I'd have a lot more haters. Just naturally. Just it's hard to be a hater for a guy who gives away everything for free. I think there's a lot of haters that just hate me for whatever God knows what reason, and they just don't say anything because they just realize that they're just going to look so stupid hating on a guy that gives everything away for free. It makes it very difficult for a hater to hate. But there are still haters, not very many of them, but there are still some. But the thing is it's such a shame, because the thing is that, yeah, it really is. I think I think what people run up against is their own ego, and they run up against, like, have I really been so dumb to be so wrong my entire life? And is everyone around me and my whole family really so dumb to not have known this? But I just kind of scoff at that idea, because the thing is that everybody's in that boat. I mean, I just don't.
Yeah.
You're not special. You're not specially dumb. You're not uniquely ignorant. It's so prevalent that. Yeah, I mean, the only way
By
out,
design.
the only way out socially is to share the information and pray for the best. I mean, and then you go out and you share the information, and then the reaction is, oh yeah, sovereign citizen. Everyone laughs at you and scoffs, and then they walk away, and then you don't really want to tell anybody anymore. Well, I'll tell you, if you don't tell anybody, you're gonna be fucking alone and depressed, jerking off to fucking manga porn for the rest of your fucking life, because I go on all these shows and people can say everything they want, and I get made fun of and all this stuff, and I make fun of myself. Fuck it, because what else are you going to do? Because what else are you going to do if you don't share this information and just get laughed at and say fine, whatever, and then go to the next person and share the information and get laughed at, and then say whatever, go to the next person, and then share your information and then get laughed at, and then go to the next person, and then you share the information, and then bang, all of a sudden, really all it is. Just as a side note for everybody listening to this, it's actually really simple. If someone's struggling financially, if they have huge companies and they're complaining to you about the fact that they make $20 billion a year and they pay 50% of it to income taxes, if they're highly successful but they hate that bullshit, they hate the system, there's certain indicators. If they're in a civil case, if they're in a criminal case, if their wages are being garnished through the IRS or through a different agency. These are excellent indicators that the information, the percentage chance that the information will be accepted by the individual goes up dramatically. Does it go up to 100%? Absolutely not. There could be someone literally with a gun in their mouth, and I've had these people, by the way, and they're like, I'm done. This is way too much. I'm ending it all. And you can bring them the information, and they still won't listen, and they'll pull the trigger and blow their own brains out right in front of you. It does happen. But if I'm just saying, because I've gotten, over the past year and a half, I've gotten about 5 emails, which is like, I was literally going to unalive myself, and because of your information, I'm not going to now. Thank you so much. Not like a ton of those, but I've gotten like 5 or 6 of those. Yeah. And those are super cool, by the way. I find that very cool and very, very amazing that my information was able to do that for people. But the thing is that it's always just a percentage. It's like going to the casino. I'd say, you're going to hit people that are at 100%. The people that are at 100%, they're already looking at some of this information. Those are your 100%ers. Like when you first found David Straight and you were talking about that, like that's your 100%er. Okay. Below that is they're into, I've been on 150 shows. Almost all of them have been conspiracy shows. Joe Rogan's a conspiracy show. And I say the word conspiracy, I don't say it as a degrading thing, because people like thinking about shit, and, it's not like, whatever. You don't see exposés much anymore, except on maybe Netflix. So it's just that expose-loving mind wanting to talk about various things. And Ian Carroll is another big one. He exploded recently. He was on Joe Rogan, right? So all these different channels, 20 years ago or even 10 years ago, it was what? Just Alex Jones and maybe a couple other lunatics in some basement. Now it's
pretty much,
it's everybody and their mothers now. So you got to think, like, there's so much interest in this. But what's funny is I go on these conspiracy shows, and they treat me like I'm the one who's completely batshit crazy. Like, this can't be true. I'm like, bro, you were just talking about aliens abducting and transsexualizing cows from Nigeria and Bigfoot, and then I come on the show and I'm the crazy one. I'm just showing you some definitions off of a government website there, brother. They treat me like I'm just. They treat me like, let's talk about UFOs and, oh yeah, have a beer, and then this psychopath is coming on after you. So trust me, I know better than almost anybody about that kind of. But I think people in those circles, which is evidence. I've been on a million of those shows. Those people who are interested in Bigfoot or UFOs or past lives or whatever you want to talk about. I don't care. I'm not saying any of this is a way of being mean toward people who are into any of that stuff. I am very into past life stuff myself and past life regression and all this stuff and spirituality. But the thing is that if they're into that stuff and they listen to those kind of shows, even Joe Rogan, I would say just immediately you're at like a 60% chance they would accept this information or be interested in this information.
I agree. I would say even higher, to be honest with you.
Could be a little higher depending on other indicators. But like if I hear Joe Rogan and I listen to Joe Rogan, bang, in my mind, you're at about like a 65%. It could be a little higher maybe, but 70. I've talked to enough of them to know that it's not a slam dunk.
Yeah.
Regardless of any other, indicator. But if you hear I hate taxes, the IRS is garnishing my bank account, and I listen to Joe Rogan every week. Okay, that's like, woo, that's like, you're up in the 90 percentile chance, very, very low risk, that if you mention this information in a certain way, it's going to be like, they're going to jump on it, right? So it's just very simple social economics, in my opinion, right? And I don't recommend, I don't know what you've done with your people or whatever, but I don't recommend if you bring this stuff up and they just laugh you out the door, it's not, I mean, maybe I'd bring it up in a different way at a different time, but I wouldn't just keep hammering people who are in that kind of situation. It's just not going to be, it's just not going to be,
no, there's openings, and then, it's not something you force. If there's an opening and you take it, then you go with it. But I just, people, it's funny because everybody, I'm pretty sure most people in this world have not this world, say in America, have a sense of that they're getting fucked. Whether it's the IRS, whatever, the police, the banks. But my thing is like, if you know you're getting fucked, don't you want to know how the game and how you're getting fucked? So that's kind of what intrigued me. Like, something's wrong. Oh, I can see what's wrong. Oh, this is how the banking system works, or whatever you're talking about. And then it's like, I think it would be, but to just put your head back in the sand after you know you're getting fucked and there's information available so you can unfuck yourself, then that's just a different breed of person. Like, then, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and
I know
think
you
that's
probably experienced
why,
that.
Yeah, and I think that's why this whole world has exploded after COVID, because I think people were getting fucked so much more obviously, and their awareness of getting fucked had gone so peaked during that time period of COVID. And I think it was like, if I know I'm getting fucked, but I'm pretty damn comfortable, I'm not going to do a whole lot. But if I know I'm getting fucked and you're just poking the shit out of me with sticks from 8 different directions, okay, now you're going to piss me off. And I think that's what happened, because by the time I started coming out with this information, this whole world was starting to get some traction. And then probably because of my work and the work of other people, because James C. Levitt and some of these guys have been around for a while.
Yeah, I realized that, yeah.
So James C. Levitt was just in this kind of little world that there wasn't a whole lot of interest and a whole lot of awareness, and then all of a sudden, because I think he started in like 2012 or 2014 or something, and he's just kind of cruising along, doing his normal thing, a few people here and there. And then he told me that by the time my first course came out, like 30 or 40% of all the consultations he was booking was directly from me.
Oh, wow.
And I guarantee you, if you spoke to James C. Levitt now, it's just gotten 10 times worse or better, depending on how you look at it, because this whole subject has just, over the past year and a half, right? And people like Ian Carroll and stuff have become the biggest names in the world. I mean, this whole movement, this whole thing is becoming literally like the biggest thing right now, right? And I say Ian Carroll because Ian Carroll is probably the closest thing to my platform, I think. Very, very technical, putting together timelines, putting together informational linear sources and lining them all up, going through them with some smiles and maybe a couple little jokes here and there. Like, I really do feel Ian Carroll's platform is is very close to, white guy, probably around my age, like even the same kind of build, sort of. He's got more hair than I do. But, just in general, I feel like his platform is probably, in fact, I've been trying to get a hold of him. He's going to be putting together an in-person party, and I've put a couple comments on his stuff. And if anybody out there knows Ian or has any access to Ian Carroll, I would love to do something with him at the old Country Saloon in Idaho, which I know he's done a lot of work with. I'd love to speak at one of his events. I'll even speak for free. I did mention that on a couple of comments. But, yeah, he's a prime example of how big all this stuff is getting. And then, like, I'll tell you right now, if you talk to someone and they say, oh, yeah, Ian Carroll, I'm following Ian Carroll, I'd say that's an immediate 85% chance or better that they would like my platform and my information.
I would agree with that.
So, yeah. So don't get too beat up. Don't get too sad that you're all alone, and whenever you bring it up, you just get beat up. Just get a little bit more astute with seeing the social cues, and just never ever give up. Because if you give up, I promise you, you will be very, very freaking lonely, my brother. I've never once ever heard of somebody learning about this information and then somehow going back to their old life. I don't think you can. I don't think it's even physically possible.
Impossible.
Yeah. So I mean, unless you blew out your own mind with a combination of some sort of deadly combination of pharmaceuticals and psychedelics, I don't really know how else you'd be able to do it. There's really no other possible option except to simply expand your social horizons. So, but on the other hand, women, if you mention it to women and you get a bad reaction, just get off of it. But if you mention it to a woman and you get a positive reaction, from my experience, it can be the best thing that ever happened to you in your dating world ever. Seriously. So there are positives to this. It also makes for like the best friends, male to male friends ever. So there are positives to it. It's sort of like you fish and you get less fish overall by a pretty dramatic amount. But the quality of the fish that you're getting now all of a sudden is way better than you've ever had before. So I don't know. I think perception is reality, and I think it's actually a very positive situation. And I think that it can actually work in your favor dramatically if you just make some adjustments as to how you do it and know when to back off, know when to move forward, know when to mention and open up. And I think that that's really all it is, personally. And I think that you really don't have any other option. It's like, why do you do litigation, Brandon? Well, I don't see any other option. Well, why do you talk to everybody and their mothers about this information? I don't see any other option. I'm going to be lonely and fucked and single for the rest of my life if I don't talk about this stuff. If I don't litigate, I'm never going to get what's owed to me. I just don't. The reason why I do these various things and the reason why these various things have come about is I just don't see any other option. And I'm always inviting people to give me a better option because they come into my comments and they flip out about how I'm doing the wrong thing. And I go, okay, so tell me what the right thing is to do. And then what do? They either go off on some huge tirade, they don't make any sense, or they just run away and escape, or they say something completely ridiculous and asinine like, oh, we just need to go and firebomb all the buildings or something ridiculous or whatever, or militia-type attitudes, which that's not anything I'm ever going to be involved with at all, and I don't recommend that. I don't want that. So I'm always available. I'm always available, guys. If you have bright ideas, I'm always available.
You can't come and complain and criticize something and then not have a better solution or a solution at all, which is what you see on social media. It's like people are quick to give their opinion, but they don't have any other way of, they don't have any input.
Yeah. Now on that note, have you had any positive contact with anyone in your profession at all? Have you, or it's just absolutely just not
regarding what we do?
Yeah, sharing any of the information, or even sharing the criminal stuff, maybe even.
Oh yeah, no, there's fascination on. Yeah, there's a lot of interest on, especially when you speak about the car and you start diving in negotiable instruments and the UCC and Yeah, there's definite interest there because people are, and then you're like, they're like, oh well, you're the guinea pig. You go through it. Let me know, because nobody wants to do it unless they know there's 100%, guarantee or a clear path to, accomplishing, getting a vehicle or whatever it may be. So yeah, I get a lot of that. There's a lot of wonder and excitement, but everybody just wants the final result and the clear path.
Yeah, I wouldn't call that a negative reaction. I would call that
not at
more
all.
of like a neutral reaction, really. I mean,
yeah, if I came off that way, I just meant that no, that's positive.
No, I don't think you did. I just wanted to be clear. Yeah, I just wanted to be clear. Well, I mean, I don't know really what else to ask. Is there anything else you think would be okay? Go ahead.
I had one thing to ask you that I was
definitely.
I wanted to ask you. So I just have you ever considered? Because I know you're heavily in this realm, and have you ever looked into or considered or like studied the whole like common law remedy regarding what we do?
Yes. The problem is that the civil infractions they can't and they don't have anything to do with anything. It's like being in a winery and then asking, what about Ford trucks or something. I just don't. It's not civil infractions. They just don't. None of it has anything to do with anything involving common law at all. It's all based off of, like, people say I have the right to travel, and then on the other side they say no, you don't. You have to have a driver's license, registration, and insurance to operate a motor vehicle on the public roadways. It was almost exactly how they always say it. The thing is that they're both wrong. Actually, the real truth of the matter is, the driver's license contracts you personally, and then the certificate of title makes it to where the state owns the car. A police officer is nothing more, I mean, from what I'm realizing from this conversation, is basically an attorney in fact on behalf of, or POA, on behalf of Florida State of California. All you're doing is you're basically a security force that's basically policing your own property. I mean, it's not your property, but you basically have like a POA over the property. If I'm in the car and I'm driving around in the car and I have a certificate of title, I have a pink slip at home, you as a police officer own the car more than I do. Do you realize that?
Now that you say it, and yes.
You literally have more of a claim because you've been given this power of attorney by the people who actually do have the claim. So by proxy, you have more power and claim over that vehicle than I do, and I'm in the goddamn thing, and I'm the one who paid for it, and I'm the one driving it around.
Yeah, as an officer of the for the corporation, yeah.
So, like, the actual fact of the matter that no one's talking about, they're not talking about it over here, and they aren't talking about it over here. Both, everybody's fucking wrong completely. The truth is, if you get rid of the driver's license and you get rid of the certificate of title, and I'm doing research on that right now. I think quick claims deeds is actually the way to do it. Then, when you quick claim the property, and you send a copy, or you get it recorded in the county recorder, and then send a copy to the DMV, and say, in the quitclaim deed, whoever's listed as the registered owner on the pink slip, this is current theory on this. If it's Brandon Joe Williams in all caps, it'd be the quitclaim deed would be Brandon Joe Williams in all caps hereby releases interest in the following automobile. VIN number, blah, 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 weight, blah, blah, date manufactured. I would put all the information from the title on there. And then I would have a copy of the certificate of title attached. And then I would take the original certificate of title and, like, I don't know, if it's already been signed over to you, I would put void on it. And I would scan all that in my computer. I would staple all that together, and I would send all that back to the DMV and say, this vehicle is hereby quitclaimed. and the original certificate of title is hereby voided because it was from this other guy. It's not mine. I'm not trying to put it back into the DMV. It's actually coming out of the DMV systems, right? And the quitclaim deed becomes sort of like the new MCO, essentially, right? And then once you send all that in and you get the green card back, or if you don't get the green card back, you just print off from the website, the USPS website, showing that it was delivered. Because every once in a while you don't get the green card back, right? And then I would have copies of all that. I'd staple that all together, and I'd go to like a county recorder. It might not be a local one, like in LA. I don't even think I could get it recorded. I would have to go to like Arizona, and you can just call the different ones and find one that's friendlier to people just filing in any sort of claim of anything, which is really all they're supposed to be doing. The one in LA is completely destroyed, right? And then just send that packet along with the proof that they received it to the county recorder, get it registered, proving that this other person, whether it's your own name in all caps, whether it's a trust, whether it's somebody you just bought a car off the side of the road, have all the information there, and you're basically quitclaiming it, showing proof that it's been exchanged from this person to this person, and you're basically telling the DMV and everybody else, it's a quitclaim, and you're not going to the DMV, and it's not going to be operated. It's not a motor vehicle. It's not going to be operated by anybody, and it's not going to be used for transporting persons or property for any fee, rate, charge, or other consideration. And then just, you don't even need necessarily to send in an affidavit. I suppose you could have that in affidavit form, but it could just be a cover letter. And then it has the original certificate of title with void, void, void all over it, and it's signed by the person you bought it from. Or if you already owned it, you sign it off because it's going from you into a trust, right? Send that in for destruction with the cover letter, all the information, and then once it's received, get the green card or evidence that it was received, and then get that recorded. As far as I'm concerned, current research basically shows that that's, and then some people are mailing in their driver's license with a cover letter to get it destroyed, and then nothing's happening. When I destroyed my driver's license, I went in and physically gave it to them. They had this teeny little form, date, why are you turning in your driver's license? And the area to write was very small on that, so I had to cram it all in there. I put on there, the principal is not a resident of any of the 50 states or the District of Columbia. That was my reason for turning in the driver's license, right? And when I went into the DMV, I had a power of attorney between myself and the sole proprietorship, and I tried to give it to him. I said, I'm the attorney, in fact, on behalf of the person who has this driver's license. And I said, here's the power of attorney. And she said, oh, no, we won't need that. And I go, okay, no problem. And I just took it back. She gave me a little form, very, very simple little form. Why are you turning this in? Date, number of the driver's license, blah, blah, blah. Sign here, date here. And I had a form from the California website that was a little different. The California website form, it was that same form almost, but it had two versions. One was the one you tear it in half, you turn this one in, and then this one is the one that they sign and you take with you. And I wanted some kind of a receipt proving that I had done this. So I already had that form with me, but she wanted me to fill out a different form. So I said, fine, I'll fill out your form, but I also want you to sign my form and date it so I have evidence that I actually did this. Because the way that I said it was, I'm the attorney on behalf of the person who has this driver's license, and I need to go back to them with evidence proving that I've actually completed this for them. That's what I told the lady at the DMV. I mean, the goddamn thing has my picture on it, so she probably thought I was a little bit crazy, but I dressed nice. I had a blazer. I brought in a leather briefcase just to make people think I was an attorney. I think I had a tie and a button-up, and I dressed up real nice, and I looked like an attorney, and I had my leather bag, and I put it up on the table, and I opened it up, and I pulled out a folder, and it was a really nice folder, and I opened the folder, and I give her the POA, and it has my Williams & Williams at the top of it, right? So the whole thing, you know, she went in the back, and I could see her talking with the supervisor, and they were looking back at me, and they were had these kind of crazy looks. But then after she went and talked to the supervisor and came back to me, no problem, Mr. Williams, we can do this. It was literally 2 minutes. Bang, bang, bang. We were done. She signed my thing. Thank you very much. I said, thank you very much. She said, thank you very much, and I left. It was
now
2 minutes.
I wonder if it would have been any different if you went in there like a T-shirt and sweatpants and you're requesting the same thing, if you know what I mean, because looks and appearance and the way you're presented go a long way. But I would imagine you probably would have ran into a little bit of a hectic issue if you had been in like a t-shirt and sweatpants and slides.
And the reason why I'm mentioning all this is because it sounds like a lot, but it's actually 5 minutes at the DMV. Doesn't cost you anything, by the way. And, put together all the documentation may take 15 or 20 minutes. Mailing it, registered mail, may take a little bit extra time. Half an hour, go down there, wait in line, send it registered mail, and then pay your $20 or $25, send registered mail, and then wait 2 or 3 weeks to get the card back. But in the grand scheme of things, that's the actual real answer. It's not, I'm not driving, I'm traveling. That's bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
If we didn't have all this statutory craziness, that would be true. The traveling and not driving thing would actually be true. It's not true right now. If you have a certificate of title and a driver's license, it's not true. If you don't have a driver's license but you still have a certificate of title, it's still not true. You got to have both have to be gone out of the equation. Now we're in a common law situation. Now you can use traveling versus driving and it'll actually fucking work. You don't own the goddamn thing. Whether you're traveling or driving, who gives a fuck? You don't own the goddamn thing. It isn't yours. What does it fucking matter? Are you driving? Are you traveling? Are you fucking a chicken? Or are you flying? Or are you eating a cheeseburger? I don't give a fuck. Are you a cigarette? Are you a cigarette? I don't give a fuck. It's totally irrelevant. I own the car. We own the car. Fuck you. Basically, that's basically what's happening. And the reason why I own the car is because you gave it to me, motherfucker. That's it.
I'm going to have to go back on this and just watch that whole part again where you were saying I did this and this and this and this and then if you do this and this.
So they own the fucking car, bro. I told Cam this on the phone, Cameron Wilson, so many times. And he's just so blown away by it. He just can't believe it because he's the driving versus traveling guy. And I tell him, I'm like, God, dude, I love you. He is like, who's that one guy? Fucking the guy who saved Venezuela. And he's always depicted as being on a horse and he's got his rapier up in the air.
Bolivar?
Bolivar. Simon, that's cool.
Simon Bolivar.
Simon Bolivar. So Simon Bolivar, when you do a lot of research about Simon Bolivar, he just believed he could just glow any situation. I mean, it could be 100,000 troops coming over the hill, and he knew he could just charisma his way through it somehow. He just knew. he was just pure, unadulterated, unlimited confidence, and that's really what Cameron Wilson is. Cameron Wilson is just like. His 100% a charisma can see me through mindset, mentality, wills, and it's like, well, hold on a second. There's certain rules. Nope. Charisma and mindset will see us through, right? And I love that mentality, and it is true. Honestly, frankly, it is true, right?
100%.
But the thing is that the reason why I like to come down from there and teach down here, even though I actually believe Cameron Wilson's on a bit of a higher frequency, and I see that, and I recognize that, and I understand that, and I love that, and I respect that, and I could operate at that frequency. But I decide willingly to go down a bit because I think that frequency is not accessible to the common person on the street.
Yeah, you're trying to work in the dirt. So it seems like.
So I want that, but I feel like to go there, you have to go here first, and to go here, it's they own the goddamn thing. You fucking gave it to them. That's pretty easy to fucking understand. You don't need to be Simon Bolivar to fucking figure that one out. Do you know what I mean? So to me, it's sort of like, let's get you here. I gave them the goddamn thing. Wow, I really fucked up. Let's fix that. Let's go there first. And then I think once you hit that level, I think from there, it's a pretty easy shift to Simon Bolivar. That's my mentality.
I agree with that.
That's sort of like my, that's sort of like what I'm trying to do, basically, right? I'm trying to make more of like a step here, and then now you can Simon Bolivar, and you can ride your horse and your rapier up in the air. And
Yeah.
the horse can
you
go up in
can't
the
give
air.
a baby a steak. You gotta start off with.
So that's
Gerber.
kind of what I do and what I teach, and I've been trying to figure out this whole MCO, MSO thing, and I think this quitclaim deed thing is going to be it. We'll see. I'm pretty positive. I haven't talked about it a whole lot because I've been kind of mulling it over. People don't realize I mull things over for a long time before I start talking about them. Like negotiable instruments, I was mulling them over for about 9 months before I really said much of anything. So that's just kind of how I roll, right?
I'm interested when you come out with your process for that and actually put it on 3.0 or whatever the
3.0. I'll probably have that nailed down. I think by the time we get into 3.0, which will probably be this summer, but we'll see. Maybe not. We'll see. But with the police, I'm not driving. I'm traveling, which is irrelevant. And then the police officer says, in order to operate a motor vehicle on public roadways, you have to have a driver's license, insurance, and registration.
Yes.
That's false. And I'm not driving, I'm traveling is also false. Both of them are false. Now, if you didn't have any certificate of title and you didn't give the state your vehicle and tell them that you wanted to operate it commercially, thus making it a motor vehicle, and you turned in a driver's license, not by mail, and it's not expired, a lot of people think like, oh, it expired. Fuck that. I've had so many comments with people.
Work.
I've had so many fucking conversations with people who are, oh, it's expired. That's it. It's done. No, dude. You've never expressed that the contract is over. It's done. It's over, bro. You got to turn that shit in and get evidence that they received it. A signature on a piece of paper, or if you can't find some kind of a form, it's just a simple letter that you're going to either have them handwrite or you can bring them in pre-printed. It can't be legal terminology. It can't be weird craziness. It can't be 10 pages long. It's just I underscore person's name hereby declare that Brandon Joe Williams surrendered the driver's license on this date and signed form DL-242 on this date, name, signature, date. Something like that would be just fine. Okay?
Yes.
But some kind of evidence, it doesn't need to be notarized, some kind of evidence that you actually went in, turned this thing in, it was accepted, and then you've received some sort of evidence that it's been completed. That's the complete cycle, okay? The certificate of title thing is more difficult because you're going to send all this shit in, and then chances are they're just going to completely ignore you and never send you anything. That's what they did to me, right? I don't know. And then I did a FOIA request or a state version of a FOIA request to try to get, and they sent me back and they said, you know, we are not allowed to like unregister a car or like destroy a certificate of title once it's been created because of blah, 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 blah statute. And then below that, it just said, all we can really tell you is the vehicle hasn't been registered since blah, blah, blah date and isn't currently registered. That was the response that I got. So whatever. That's the best I can do. I don't know.
Have you requested a purge of like their records?
So they
like
said
if
they can't do it.
Yeah.
They said there's some local statute that says they can't do it. So as far as I'm concerned,
which is crazy.
just send everything in, get receipts, and then if it ever does go into litigation and they ever do pull that shit on you, you have the evidence, and then now the counterclaim to that would be, it sounds like I already told you there's no contract. I already killed this thing a long time ago. Now we're starting to move into peonage, forced labor, forced contract, indentured servitude. We're starting to move into some pretty serious civil or maybe even criminal. See, the thing is, if you give them the car, and then they take their own car, there's no civil or criminal case. That's why all these cases fall apart.
Yeah.
And I don't know if the judges they know this and they're just not telling anyone any of this. I don't know exactly what the problem is.
I think they do.
Well, then that's the problem, because if they just told people, hey, we're just taking back our own shit because you gave it to us, driving versus traveling is irrelevant, and then all the shit the officer's saying is also fucking irrelevant. You're both fucking retarded. You're fucked. It's ours now. Goodbye. Go fuck yourself. That's exactly true. That's exactly what's happening.
I agree.
So, this whole police versus sovereign citizen thing is actually pretty simple to figure out. I mean, get those two things scored away, and then put copies of all of that in your car, and that becomes your registration. That little package of 4 or 5 pieces of paper, when he asks you for the registration, you say, well, officer, it's a bit confusing on that, but I actually have the title here, copies of the title. I'm going to go ahead and give that to you because it is registered to a trust, but it would be like it's basically a private registration, right? But this is legally the current ownership documentation for, and it does have the owner's name listed on it because you're the owner and you're the one listed on the bill of sale, which became the quitclaim deed, right? So it is a title. It's like handing the officer a title for a car you just bought. I just bought it. I'm taking it home. This is all I got. It's just a fucking title for you. I don't have anything else for you. It's the same conversation, basically.
Assuming that the officer even knows, what that all means.
Well, that's all. I mean, that's all you can do. I mean, I don't know. Getting into driving versus traveling is just going to be bad because A, it's irrelevant, and B, it's just going to they're just going to go fucking ballistic. So it's just
they're not going to know what you're talking. I promise you, they're not going to know what you're talking about
with the title or with any of it.
Just with any of it, police officers are taught what they're taught. In the academy and training, whatever, monthly legal bulletins, like this is what you do, this is what you look for, and anything outside of that.
What do they do when they're given this kind of stuff? Do they call it in? Is there like a call?
No, if you get pulled over, right? Just say even like in your situation, I'm just thinking like if it was me 5, 6, 7 years ago, and then you're like, oh, I got this this diplomat tag, and here's all of my paperwork, and here's like, even if you were like, oh, here's the MCO to this vehicle, and or whatever, it's owned by a trust. The average police officer is just going to be like, not even have any clue what any of that even means.
How would they process something like that?
They would
do they just say fuck it and let you go, or do they call it in, or what do they?
Well, there could be like, okay, I'm not dealing with this. Just get the hell out of here. Or
do you think that's why? Because I hear a lot of that kind of thing. Is that why they do that?
Yeah, because if you don't know what you're dealing with, and this person seems like they know what they're talking about, but you have no clue what the fuck they're talking about, you're just going to be like, I would have no idea how to issue a citation or write this up. So just off to the next one, because the next one, I know, like, whoever, they committed this traffic. You know what I'm saying?
Well, at that point, if that's the case, then it just comes down to just being kind and not being an asshole, really. I mean, that's really it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's what I teach, so that makes sense, because I hear a lot of that, by the way.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Have a nice day. Or what I hear a lot is, I've never seen anything like this before. And like a shock.
Yeah.
But that's after they went to the computer and came back. I hear a lot of that shit too.
But so my personal experience, I remember running into a sovereign citizen, and so he was in the he had a driver's license at one point, so it was easy to find him. But like it's kind of like, and I didn't know what I know at the time, but it's just kind of like, okay, like he has this license, it's suspended, and he's saying, he's a sovereign citizen, so it's just kind of like, well, whatever, man, here's your citation, have a great day. You know what I mean?
So
that's basically.
So was he mean and hostile?
No.
He just said,
nope.
he said straight up the word I am a sovereign citizen.
it had some funny tag on it.
My God.
It had some, but this is like you said. This is going back like 2012, 2013.
But this is when it was all like all the hype, and you didn't call for backup. You were just like citation, get the fuck out of here, kind of thing.
Yeah, not at that time. Now it was just kind of like, well, hey, here's your driver's license. It's suspended, and but that's what I'm saying. It was kind of it was easy because it was just at the time it was like, whatever, man. Whatever, man. Here's your ticket.
So what goes through a cop's mind that makes them decide if they're going to write a citation, tow the vehicle, or start breaking windows? Like, what goes through a police officer's mind that creates the decision between box number 1, 2, and 3?
I think time periods, because I think because remember, at least in the state of Florida, you used to have to sign the citation. And if you issued a citation and the driver didn't sign it, you could take them to jail. So I guess it would. So I would say it depends on the officer, probably depends on the time period, and it also probably depends on who you're dealing with. Like, hey, are they polite? Do they sound like they know what they're talking about? You just don't know what they're talking about. And does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, all right, this just seems like a normal guy. Maybe he's confused. Maybe he's crazy, but whatever. Like, have a nice day.
Do you what occurred or what was issued that caused the citations to no longer need to be signed?
I believe it was some case law. I just remember there was a period in time. There was like, all right, hey, nobody no longer needs to sign citations. As long as you give it to them, and that's it. Doesn't matter if they sign it or not. Oh, I mean, that's the criminal citation. The non-criminal citations.
Civil, yeah.
Because I get, they consider it like if you have, driving on a suspended license with knowledge, that's considered a criminal citation.
Okay.
Where they would actually, but that one does require a signature. But as far as like some kind, like a moving infraction, yeah, that no longer required a signature.
Interesting.
Very interesting.
Because that would make it a draft rather than a note at that point.
Which actually, now that I think about it, because it just crossed my mind looking into the case law that probably, made that an outcome. You know what I mean? It now it's making me wonder, like, did somebody dive into like, well, hey, you're forcing somebody into a contract, but if you hand it over and they technically accept it, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's all UCC stuff. It's all UCC stuff. It's all UCC stuff. And
That's
nobody knows.
like.
Nobody knows it. And you bring it up in the courts, and they all call you crazy. And I cannot figure it out. It's just all I'm trying to figure out. It's like everything is the UCC. Everything is the UCC. But if you bring it up at all anywhere, they just either A, they really don't know, which is, I suppose, a possibility.
Which they don't.
Or they just gaslight. It's like there's like a big red gaslight button underneath the table for like serious emergencies, and it's like anything involving any commercial code, and they smash that thing like the cartoons where it's the big huge hand that comes down and practically breaks the fucking table in 3 pieces. There's nothing that hammers that fucking red emergency button harder than start saying anything about a commercial code, and I just can't figure out why.
I think just because it's been bastardized by the early sovereign citizens, with putting it on their plates, and because I do remember seeing, like, you know what I mean, like people putting UCC, and I think it's been given a negative spin.
Yeah.
When somebody automatically sees, especially like law enforcement, like, oh, here's a UCC crap,
Yeah.
Meanwhile, nobody knows it's in every state's statutes. Every state, has adopted Uniform Commercial Code.
Yeah, and then people say like, "Oh, the UCC is not law," and it's like it's just a gaslight, because it sure, I guess technically, if you take that sentence word by word, it is true, But it's like, dude, like it's in most states it's the exact same word for word, comma for comma, period for period of the UCC, exactly duplicated. It's just called something like in California, the California Commercial Code. So
Yes.
you say the UCC is law. It's I suppose, yeah, literally that sentence is false. But the thing is that the UCC is directly, exactly duplicated into law at the California level. It's called the California Commercial Code. So I say the UCC is law, and they go, no, it's not, fuck you. And I go, oh, yeah, that's right. And I learned that one the hard way, get my ass beat.
Yeah.
And I started saying, oh, yeah, the California Commercial Code is law. And then they just started, now they don't say I'm wrong. Now they just start calling me a sovereign citizen, and they gaslight me. So it's
Which is funny because it's like, well, why is it in the state statute then if it's, if it's sovereign
they just
citizen
won't
stuff?
Even it's just like you can't even get. I've been literally trying for a year to get anyone to talk about anything in any commercial code, and you just can't. And I was telling the I'm gonna figure it out. Don't get me wrong. I'll die on this hill. I'll work on this shit till the day I fucking die. I'm getting that fucking these commercial codes fucking listened to if it fucking kills me, literally. I'll tell you right now. But I asked the court of clerk, the guy I had on the show, why is it every time I bring up the commercial code, it's just such a stonewall or a gaslight? And he said when he went through law school, it was just the commercial code, the UCC and commercial code classes were like the most painful, most awful, and most misunderstood. And it's just like, he basically said, Brandon, like no one knows any of the shit that's in there. Even if they've done classes on it in law school, they still have no clue what's in there. Like that shit's like the most fucked, the most complicated, the most difficult thing of like every single type of law. And you're just running into either they don't know or they have ego and they just don't care and it's just ego or they just don't know, basically is what he told me. So
I can see that.
But I'm hoping that changes sooner than later, and I'm just going to keep pressing and keep learning more things like the Rule 301 and 402 and 602 and 603 and getting into the rules of professional conduct, and we're starting to get into like how to do sanctions and when do you do sanctions, like all this stuff. We're just piecing it together piece by piece by Lego block, and eventually we're going to get the commercial code talked about. And I think it goes without saying, as soon as I can get through all the procedural horseshit and we can actually start talking about the commercial code, there is not one motherfucker on the planet. I don't care if they're a 30-year banking attorney. I don't care if it's the entire litigation squad in American Express. I don't care if it's the entire litigation squad of the entire DOJ. Against little old one stupid fuck, they don't stand a goddamn chance. If I can get past the procedural stuff, once I actually get traction and we start talking about actual commercial code legal process, I don't think anyone stands a chance against me. It's just
I don't believe so either.
I thought I would be able to get into that stuff pretty rapidly, and that's why I was so confident and optimistic when I started this journey. I thought, dude, I'm just going to go in there. There could be 400 30-year attorneys, and they just literally don't stand a fucking chance. And then a year and 3 months later, it's just the procedural aspect is just extremely difficult, and I wasn't anticipating that. So eventually I'll have all the procedural stuff worked out, and we're just going to keep losing and keep getting my ass beat until I figure that out, because once I figure that out and we move to stage 2, which is the actual commercial code, I feel very confident there. So that's basically what I'm trying to do. And I recommend if anyone's getting into this, just realize that if you have a few cases that you'd like to file civilly, I probably would recommend you file the one that you wouldn't mind losing first. because it's a hell of a process. I was just not expecting this much procedural focus. Procedure is literally everything, and it's so sad to see it.
It's so crazy that that's everything, and it's just such bullshit.
Yeah, it really
you can't
is.
even like get down to the facts of the matter. You got to get through procedures. Like, Jesus fucking Christ.
I don't think I've ever, hardly at all, ever talked about anything of any real substance. And I'm a year and 2 months into this thing.
Insane.
So,
administrative courts.
yeah. So, but once we get the procedure down, we'll create a course and we'll get it all wrapped up, and then at that point, you know, once that's all wrapped up and once we've got that nailed down real nice, then at that point we'll start getting into non-procedural chats, and I think by the time we get to that point, it'll become a lot easier. But all these people that are out there who think it's going to become super easy one day because of our work, I just don't. You're still going to need to do a lot of work to get it to pop, but I just think it'll be easier.
Agreed.
But it's never going to be easy. I don't think that's ever going to happen.
But a year and 3 months into it, I feel like you're still. It's a lot of headway, but it's still early. Still, you know what I mean?
It's binary. What I'm trying to do is totally binary. It's either you've got it, Brandon, or you don't.
Yeah.
And it's like there is no like. You've almost got it. You kind of got it. You're 50% of the way there. It's just you either got it or you don't. And it's just I step in the ring and I don't got it.
Yeah.
And then I leave and then I step in the ring and I don't got it. And I step out and then I step in the ring and then I don't got it. But one day I'm going to step in that ring and it's going to be now you got it. And then once I get that wave through and we start moving into discovery, I think that's literally it. I mean, we'll see. I've already been pretty overly optimistic about the beginning, so we'll see. But I just really, even with all the beatings and damage and all the broken bones and everything and blood shed that I've had from getting through this and thinking I was too optimistic, I still think that once we get past the procedural stuff, it's over. I still, even though I'm very much in my head, I'm like, Brandon, It could be just like it was before, where you thought it was going to be so easy, and then you're just going to go in there and get your head fucking smashed. And it's like I still think, even with all the head smashing that's been going on, that once we get past this, and once we move past these motion to dismiss, and once I can actually survive a motion to dismiss, I think that's it, brother. I think they're really going to call me as soon as the motion to dismiss is fucking denied, and I'll get a phone call for a fucking settlement. Like, literally. I don't think there's going to be any attempt to try to move the ball down the field at all, because I just don't.
That's exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah. But I'm ready for it to not happen. I've definitely, but I still, even with all the humbling and all the beatings, I still think I still think that's what's going to happen, because I've never met anyone. I've talked to people with 30 years banking experience, banking executives. They can't even tell me the definition of what a negotiable instrument is.
That's funny, because I've talked to a lot of people at this particular bank, and
so it's that is, once I get past the motion to dismiss, to me, that's what I'm going to be going up against. I have all these attorneys in all these cases, and they've said in a couple of cases, we do not accept promissory notes, literally in their fucking motion. And I'm like,
that's jackpot. Oh, man.
Obviously, if an attorney says that in one of their motions, they have no idea what's going on. I mean, that's a slam dunk. You know what I mean? That should
just be case closed. The judge just say, okay, case closed.
So, anyways, I just, it's a hell of an adventure. We think, we're in this world where you can't go out and adventure on a boat to, uncharted islands. I mean, I guess you could, but there's most of it's been done, right? So if you want, you read the old texts of people going out and doing crazy shit and going to exploring a new land, and it's like, oh, that'd be so cool if I could do that today. I feel like I'm doing that. I feel like I'm fucking,
Oh, most definitely, yeah.
adventuring and exploring into these unknown. I feel like I'm one of these old fucking Simon Bolivar motherfuckers, and I love it. I love every second of it. So people want it to be easier, and they want it to be easy street. I mean, I just don't. I feel like those people are just missing out on a lot of the fun. It all comes down to the perception of how you.
Yeah, the experience.
Yeah, it's definitely got its very highs and very lows, but. I wouldn't, now that I'm in it and now that I've started It's sort of like before I started. I wish it was easier, and I waited and I dragged my feet and all this. But then once I was like, fuck it, there's nothing else I can do, and I've done all my little CFPB reports and all my little horse shit that didn't go anywhere. It was all pretty pointless, but it was all building the case. It was good. You could do it. Once I finally exhausted all that, I said, "This is it, brother. I mean, it's either litigation or quit.
Yeah.
Those are your two choices." And once I went over that hump and I started getting started, it started to become very enjoyable. But it sure as fuck wasn't enjoyable at the beginning.
I'd be lying if I said it didn't. It didn't. I think I told you this in the way beginning, but it gets you riled up. It gets you a little bit excited. You get a little girthy when you start thinking about some of this stuff.
Yeah. Oh yeah. All right. Well, we're rounding out on 3 hours. Anything else? Anything else? I mean, I'm not trying to scoot you off of here, but anything else that you'd like to say or add or mention or drop?
We probably missed some stuff. I would just say I'd want who's ever watching just to. I think I've already reiterated it a few times. Just, law enforcement does not know what you know. They know the statutes. That's it. So, and that's pretty much it. And there was like a couple other things I wanted to chat with you about. I think maybe like offline, but
okay.
No. Other than that, all good, man. It was a pleasure being on here.
Well, thank you very much for being on the show. I'll end off now, and really appreciate this. And again, anyone in the comments, please keep in mind, again, if you're really, really, really ultra mean and rude, and it just has nothing to do with anything, and you're just screaming about God knows what, probably going to get banned. What that means is that your comments will be removed, and you will no longer be able to comment on any video on the channel forever. So your username will be banned from all comments forever. If you have something that you want to say and it's actually attached to actual conversation, but it may contain some things inside of it that may not be the nicest things in the world, I will probably not ban those. I'll probably leave those there, as I often do with a lot of the videos, because I do try to practice some level of free speech, but just keep in mind, if you do that, it may make it more difficult. If I'm trying to get, let's say, a retired judge on the show, or another police officer, or somebody else, and they go through and they see this video, and then they go into the comments, and it's just bashing my guests endlessly throughout the comments, it may make it more difficult, if not literally impossible, for me to have other guests on the show who may have a lot of really interesting things to say. A retired judge would be an absolute fucking gold mine to have on the show.
Oh, wow.
So just keep that in mind. And thank you very much for being on the show, Sonny.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right,
and thank you for all your work.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that.
All right.